Hey guys, welcome to the stream. I messed up and accidentally forgot to set the scheduled stream to mobile, so I wasn't able to launch it on my phone, so I had to reset that. Alright, let's do this real quick. I just have to set up chat on my iPad so I can see what you guys are saying. I was completely ready, just like fully prepped for the stream, and then bam, realized I messed up. So yeah, that's fun. Always great. I just have to set up chat. Yep, and I have to mute the iPad. There we go. Okay, we are fine. We're chill. Now I just have to tell the people that are in the waiting room for the other stream about the change. Yeah, need to make a Twitter post about the fact that the stream's up. So sorry guys, just got a little setup to do. But yeah, so the basic plan for today, I have 74 spells that I've designed over the past 4 years, and recently I got this new spell book, which is actually pretty nice. What I want to do is put all my spells in here with in-depth descriptions for each, so that way I can basically, if anyone wants to know how a spell works, I can just open to the page and show them the basic, just like the description of how it works, all the things involved, how the signs sigils included, all that stuff. All right, just gotta go to Twitter real quick. Oh wait, no, that's copyrighted. I can't whistle that song. Unfortunate. All right. Almost done, guys. Sorry for the delay. Messed up my setup. All right, and that should more or less be good. Just gotta change some links real quick. Title of the stream, all that stuff. The cup? Oh, actually, so I found this cup. Basically, I have a friend online. I'll just link to their social real quick. I'll pull it up on my laptop. So their name is Becky Weber, or Eastern Criminal on Twitter. They have a Ko-fi store, an Etsy store, where you can buy their pottery and such. And some of their, I helped actually design this spell cup. Basically, it's supposed to be modeled after the what is it? Smoke sculpture teacup from Witch Hat Kitchen. And I helped with the spells, so they sent me a free one. You can find their store. I'll actually link it in the description later, but you can find them at Eastern Criminal on Twitter, Becky Weber, and they link to their Etsy right here, where you can get the spell cups. I wonder if they still have them in stock. They might not have them in stock anymore. I wonder if she still has them. No, it looks like she doesn't have them in stock anymore. But I think you could shoot Becky a DM and ask for one. I'm sure they'd be more than willing to make one specifically for you. If you pay, of course, which I didn't have to because I helped. But I love this thing. I didn't drink tea before, but ever since I got this cup, I've turned into a tea drinker. All right, almost done with the setup stuff. Just gotta change the video title, change some links that I sent on Discord. And then we'll be good to go. Gotta change the video title and description for the stream. Basically what ended up happening with the stream is I forgot to press schedule stream for mobile, and it was scheduled for live streaming software instead. So so I had to reset everything. All right, 10 minutes late, but still, we're here. Okay, so the basic idea of this new spellbook I have is I want to put each of my 74 spells on a page. Some I can double up for really simple ones, but the basic idea, get a spell on each page, write a description of how it works, and show what's inside it, so that I can basically easily explain my spells to other people. Though mostly this is just a project I'm doing for fun. Because currently, I'll show you my current spellbook. Phone, come on. This is my spellbook right now. There we go. Currently I have 74 spells in here. I've been working on this thing for over the course of 4 years. And I just want basically it to be able to easily explain and show off each spell individually. Just highlight how it works rather than have people look at them and be like, oh, that's cool. Now, what does that even do? You know what I mean? Because if people don't know what the spells do, then there's not much point in sharing them because they don't have a good idea of what's involved. So currently I have 3 spells transcribed into the new detailed spellbook. I have 71 left, so I'm only 4% done. So this might take a while. I'm probably gonna stream this over several days, but yeah, that's the basic idea. So I'm kind of just gonna randomly start on this page that I'm currently open to. We're gonna start with the, I guess the Crystal Confetti spell. So basically what this spell does is it's based off of Richie's Crystal Ribbon spell. Basically producing a ribbon made of crystal, and then it uses modified cut spells to cut it up. So what a cut spell is, so this cut spell is a spell that I designed myself. Basically it's a modified version of Wall Breaker, where instead of simply crushing all the material nearby into a fine powder, it confines that crushing into a narrow plane, basically like onto a line, so that rather than crushing everything nearby, it only will crush along a straight line, so that you can cut something in half rather than reducing it to dust. So I might want to make this a little smaller, center it there. Should be good. This spell is a bit smaller than the other ones I've been making so far, a little less complicated, so I won't need quite as much room to make it. I'm not quite sure why people in Witch Hat don't use compasses to draw things. It makes it a lot easier. Alright, so I'm going to start off with a crystal sign. So as this spell is the Crystal Confetti spell, so of course it's going to be based off of crystal, so I'm going to put Crystal Sigil in the middle. So far, the only crystal spells we've seen have been ones from Richie. Not sure how they're going to pronounce her name in the anime, but can't wait for that. So we only really have her to base our spell design off of. Something interesting about crystal is, despite it creating a solid object, like manipulating a solid object similar to Earth, Earth is not able to create material. It can only manipulate material nearby, but crystal, on the other hand, is able to generate material from nothing. So it's pretty useful for spells where you want to erect a barrier quickly without disrupting the surrounding area, or spells where you want to make something without damaging the ground nearby, because with earth you have no choice but to take material from elsewhere to do something. So next, after the crystal sigil in the center, we're going to have a weave sign. Weave signs are the sign responsible for the ribbons in all of Richie's spells. It basically has the effect of creating a long, flexible, basically just ribbon out of the material that the magic is based on. So far, we've seen it in the... We haven't seen it in the Knight's Morales' spell, like in the Banner spell. But we have seen it in Boulder Stretch Rope, which is basically this exact spell that we have on the page right now, but with an earth sigil in the center instead of a crystal one. And we've also seen it in the Crystal Fragment Bangles, which are the rings that whenever one of the girls activates it, it makes the light that goes to the other apprentices. Now, I don't remember what the official name for that item is. I know Crystal Fragment Bangles was the name it had in the scanlation before we got these simulpub, well, not simulpub, but like 1 week delayed translation. Don't remember the real name though. What am I looking for? I am opening something on my laptop. I don't know what. I don't need to do that. What am I doing? Okay. So next up, to ensure that, so currently we're making a ribbon out of crystal, right? If we want to turn this into confetti, we're gonna have to cut it up somehow, which we're going to achieve with the cut signs. So how we're going to do that, first we're going to need columns so that we can get the crystal fragment, like the crystal ribbon, to emit from the spell. Because if we didn't have this, the only way to make the crystal ribbons would basically be to take the spell, place it on a piece of crystal, and then like pull it away so it could stretch it out into a ribbon. But by putting column on here, we're making it so that it actually emits stuff rather than manipulates material nearby. So that way we can actually get a ribbon produced by the spell. One application, actually, I'm going to pull something up real quick for something I did with the spell a while back. So last year for the Spellzine, Witch Hat Spellzine, I think that's what it's called, for their winter edition. It's run by Kiki over on Twitter. Hey, okay, how you doing, dude? But, basically, in the sign, I'd made a Christmas ornament based on this spell. I'll just pull it up real quick so you guys can see what I mean. I have to navigate my folders real fast. Fan stuff, my stuff, spells. Is this a contraption? This would classify as a contraption. Where did I put this? There it is. So basically, it's kind of hard to see here because it's on a black background, it's a transparent image, but this is the basic idea. You get your crystal ribbon, it produces it, and then the cut signs chop it up so that you get confetti, more or less. Let's see if I have a better image of this somewhere. I do not, unfortunately. That's a shame. But yeah, that's the basic idea. Like, in this case, this isn't specifically meant for being put inside of an ornament. This is just a general spell, but the design is more or less the same. Actually, it might be the same. Let me check real quick. Not quite the same. The spell that I showed for the design that I made, that has a rotating wind signs to make it so it swirls around on the interior, like so the confetti gets swirled around by the wind inside of the ornament. But this version doesn't have that because it's just meant to produce the crystal confetti. Is this centered? Now I'm gonna pretend it is. If it's not, oh well, woe is me. I don't care. So next up, we're gonna have the region signs. Now, region is a little strange as far as signs are concerned. What region does is it defines where, in relation to the glyph or the sigil, a spell will manifest. So in this case, ooh, that's not working. That's not centered at all. The only thing I don't like about the spellbook is that whenever I erase, it will wear away at some of the paper because it is, I don't know how to describe this paper, but it is a little flimsy, I guess you could say. It is really nice though. It's this way for a reason, but it does make it hard to erase. But essentially, by putting region here facing each other, we basically confine the spell where it manifests to in between the region signs. So in this case, since the region signs are, you can make a line down the middle. So where the triangle is currently is where it would be able to manifest from. So the cut signs, which I'm going to add later, the parts that cut the ribbons can only happen along this line. So that way I can make it so it doesn't completely pulverize the confetti or the crystal ribbon. Rather, it will chop it up. Because if I didn't put these here, it would be pulverized fully because of how the wall breaker spell operates, which involves the same signs that I'm using here, which will be crush. So there we go. We got our region signs placed. I don't like that. This is getting erased, moved further out. I need to work on my planning a little bit for spells, like where I put something before I commit. Because here I made the error of putting it somewhere prematurely twice. All right, so now that we have the region signs added, we can add the cut spells. So cut is basically just wall breaker. Wall breaker confined to a line. I described this a minute ago, but wall breaker functions by essentially reducing whatever it's affecting to rubble. So if you have rocks, it would turn it to sand. If you had porcelain, it would be turned to powder. If you had plants, they would be, like, if you had dried plants, they would be turned to, like, powdered dried plants. You know what I mean? It just basically crushes it down into dust. So by doing that along the defined lines I mentioned before, you're able to cut something in half down that line rather than completely pulverize it. Yeah, this paper, it can sometimes be a little finicky. I'm not a big fan of that part, but you know, the book looks so nice, I don't really care. The important thing to remember with crush signs is that they point inward, so this part goes in towards the middle. Maybe change the type of eraser you use on the paper would decrease the damage. Yeah, I've done that a little bit. I've done some experimenting. So currently I only have the pink kind and the white kind, so both are equally bad. Well, white might actually be a little worse. I should probably try to use pink more. Alright, so that should be the full spell completed, yeah. So the crush signs, cut down lines. Oh, made an oopsie. So the crush signs with the region, cut down a line. Column and weave and crystal make a crystal ribbon that comes out the paper. So, yep, that's the spell. So next we're gonna write the name up top, which would be Crystal Confetti. So I'm basing this placement off the first page I had. So right there. Crystal Confetti. How do you spell confetti, guys? Chat, how do you spell confetti? All right, 2 T's, thank you. You know what might be nice to print out that picture I showed you guys earlier? I'll pull it up again just for anyone that's not here. This basically is the kind of stuff the spell's supposed to produce, just like ribbons of crystal chopped up. Maybe I should print this out and glue it into the book, because I know I can't draw that well in this thing. Where is... Dude, Kaldazar, I'm a native speaker, I can't spell it. So right here on the vacuum cleaner spell, this right here, you can see how it works. Basically, spell sucks in air. You cut the center hole out. This part sucks in air, and this part solidifies dust. You glue a cloth bag onto the back, and it traps the dust inside, but lets the air out. My drawing wasn't very good for this. Normally, I can draw better, but I don't know. Something about this paper just makes it harder for me. So I'm going to maybe consider printing it out. So now for the boring part, I have to write down the description for how the spell works. So I'm just going to look. All right, this spell region signs to confine the area affected by crush to line. How do I do this? It confines the area affected to a line. Yeah, a line. Rather than the entire object. This allows for the crystal ribbon produced by the spell to be cut up into confetti. Rather than fully pulverized. Oh, that was bad. Rather... my handwriting suddenly went from bad to horrible. Okay. Yeah, I'm not good at... my handwriting's never been good. But, yeah, I'm trying to be fast, to keep you guys entertained. So long as it's legible. That R is not very legible. Could be that they don't use compasses because the apprentices are being trained to create spells in a pinch, and obviously can't use a compass then, lol. But I can see... oh, drop blocked. But I can see Ori using one. Okay, yes. So I do agree with that. It's probably meant to be easy to do on the field. But in my opinion, let me show you something real quick. So, boom, boom. If you have it dialed in advance, it is not particularly hard to draw with the compass. And you can get something fairly perfect. Now, it would be slightly faster if you are extremely proficient to just draw with a... draw it by hand. Let me do this again. Faster this time. Yeah, it is. It can be kind of hard. But compasses aren't that difficult to use. If anything, it might be easier to use them than drawing by hand, just in... maybe except for at the very highest levels. So I can see that reasoning, but it is kind of difficult, so it does confuse me a bit. But with people like Oreo and people that are making spells for a living, and they do it like by commission and have time to do stuff, then absolutely yes. Using a compass would be extremely advisable, because that way you can get the most bang for your buck, make it last as long as you want. Or if you want to go the Apple route, you don't do that, so it stops working sooner, and then you get paid more money because you have to repair it more frequently. But, you know, let's not be anti-consumerist here. That's Apple's job, not ours. Don't you just love enshittification, guys? It's so much fun when my tech becomes useless. All right, so next we have to draw, well, we have to define what's used in the spell. So first we're going to have crystal. So crystal. Then we have crush. I should probably make that smaller. I wonder if they could use a stamp to put a sigil really quick. Okay, that idea, I cannot tell you how many times people have mentioned that same idea. It is a very common one, and I have zero doubt in my mind that if Witch Hat were real, like if the world was a real place, or potentially even in universe already, people would use stamps absolutely all the time. Well, actually, no. As a spell maker, now I'm thinking about it, stamps are harder to position, in my opinion, because it's harder to see where the sigil will go. If you had really specialist stamps and you're making something very precise, then yes, I can see it. But for everyday spell making, stamps would actually be more difficult to use. Mass printing, yes. Okay, so speaking of mass printing, I actually have a design that I made a while back. I'll pull it up real quick. So I do I used to say that I don't design weapons for Witch Hat, but they're just so cool. Sometimes it's hard not to. I try to keep it to a minimum. I don't want to become choony, you know what I mean? But here's an example of something that could be considered a weapon. This is the spell gatling gun design I made a while back. Basically how it works, you have an activator arm that goes up and down, you spin a wheel and it feeds the tape through. A way you could make an extremely long tape so you could fire this for a long time would be you make a drum. I need a cylindrical object. Okay, spray bottle. You keep a drum, and on the surface of the drum, you make with metal, make it coming out of the surface the shape of the spell. And then you have two rollers on the side to engage with the paper. You spin it, and it will cause the paper to get fed through. Oh, something fell on the floor. And if you make it so that you have like a brush on the top coating the stamp, like the raised parts with ink, you could make it so you just constantly print out a strip of paper with the spells at regular intervals. So it would be pretty easy to mass produce weaponry. I think Shirahama simply hasn't thought about it much, because there are a lot of ways to make combat spells that would be extremely devastating, especially contraptions. Combat contraptions are probably the most effective way, theoretically, to just obliterate someone. Because the thing with Witch Hat is, at a certain point, it combat with magic would look less like one-on-one duels, or like feats of strength or power and like one-on-one showdowns like you see in anime typically, and more like actual militarized conflicts where you have equipment, tactics, large groups, large units, where everyone is pretty much evenly matched, because beyond personal skill, it's like sword fighting versus guns. It's really hard to learn how to use a sword. But as soon as guns were invented, even though it was so much easier to use them, they just absolutely dominated the battlefield, and they were the great equalizer of sorts. It's the same thing with combat contraptions. They're so easy to use, so much more dangerous than simple combat spells. And like simple combat spells you draw by hand. And what was I going to say? And they're so much easier to mass produce, like to the point where it becomes necessary to use them. So yeah. Real Witch Hat battles, like if it was in a real world setting, they would be much more like modern militarized conflict than you'd think. I've had 4 years to ruminate on this, and that is the conclusion I and many others have reached. Alright, so we have crystal, we have weave, that's a terrible weave. Weave is one of the signs, Weave is okay. Weave is one of those signs that are a little harder than normal to draw. Some other ones that are pretty difficult are Rainmaker and Bind. Those are some particularly difficult ones. I assume the dragon one would be hard to make as well, but I've never attempted it, so I can't speak from experience there. But some signs are much harder to draw than others, and Weave can be one of them. Can be. It's less so now for me than it used to be, but it still is fairly difficult comparatively to some of the other ones. Column is probably the easiest. I'm going to be completely level with you. Column is probably the easiest to draw. Bolts is pretty easy as well. One of the harder ones. What's a hard one that's pretty simple? Convergence, even though it's just an equilateral triangle, is surprisingly difficult to draw because it has to be so precise. The fire sigil is similar in the same way, but, I don't really care how equilateral they are. Let me pull up an example. I've been yapping, so I'll just show you what it is. This is convergence right here. I need to see my camera. This is convergence. Basically an equilateral triangle. It basically condenses your spell, converges it down to a point. If you have sand, it will condense it down to stone, make it a lot more firm and, rigid, kind of like sandstone. With other spells, it will focus it down and make it more precise. And this spell doesn't involve them. What am I talking about? So crush, column. Now we just need regions. Regions is actually regions, there's a pretty interesting story associated with it. At first, we used to call it, what did we call it before? Before we called it regions, we called it directional, I think. Direction, what was it? What was it that we called it? Direction signs? I think something like that. But basically what we originally thought is that regions defined which direction a spell will manifest. It wasn't until the Volume 12 special edition, like the Volume 12 bonus chapter was released, or bonus content was released, that we actually got a name for it, which was domain. Like, we didn't immediately know what the name was because we had to translate it first. Am I missing anything? Yes. But by using a bunch of translations, we got answers like domain, region, what was it? Like domain, territory, region, area, stuff like that. And from there, we basically managed to figure out that regions is actually, instead of defining which direction a spell will manifest in, it determines where it is. And when the Volume 12 released in English, we got the answer that we figured out we were actually correct in our reassessment. And yeah, spellmaking, it's a lot of, well, figuring out how the magic system works is a lot of trial and error. Basically, you have to just compare spells, form logical conclusions, think about what makes the most sense until you get an answer that fits everything you've seen. And then later on, you might be thrown something, like see a new spell that contains that sign that confirms your suspicions, or one that forces you to reassess the way that you think the spell works. So it's always an iterative process. Nothing is ever the same. Things are always changing. So it is important if you're a spellmaker to keep up. The reason I don't have to worry about that is because I have been writing the manual, like the wiki pages, the entire time. So I'm typically the one to find these discrepancies. Me and OK668, mostly us, are the ones to find them. But yeah, if you're a fan of the magic system, it's important you keep up and pay attention to what's been going on, or else you might get left behind. All right, so next spell. So this was 4 down. Let's see, calculator. How far along are we? So I have 74 spells to make. 4 divided by 74. 5.4% of the way done. One day, Shirahama will ask you for your help to design new spells. Yeah, okay. So something funny. Let me pull something up on Twitter real quick about that. She did quote retweet me 2 times, but there's one in particular that is pretty funny. So I think it was last year, maybe 1.5 years ago that this happened. I will check real quick. But I posted my spell book. I think it was when I got it, the new cover. I'll show you the new cover. So before the spell book, the old one, the front cover was black like this. Ignore the dirtiness on this. It's seen some action. But it used to just be black like that. I'll actually grab this from the stand. Something funny, by the way. This is how I'm keeping my phone suspended. I have a clamp, thing that I made a bunch of lashings with, piece of wood, and some string, and that's how I keep this thing suspended. But yeah, it used to look like this on both sides, but then I added this cover. It was before I added the spell on the front, the Snugstone spell. But I posted that on Twitter, and what ended up happening is Sensei, just gotta pull up the tweet real quick. Sorry about this, guys. A little bit of a tangent, but you know, we're going to be here for a while, so might as well indulge the tangents so we don't get bored. And I just posted the spell. I didn't expect it to get... I expected it to get some traction, because it was fairly impressive. But I didn't expect what happened to happen, so... I wake up, and what do I see? I see this. Sensei quote retweeting my tweet and saying, "You have probably painted more spells than I have." So, it is safe to say that I am fairly obsessed. To the point where I've garnered notice. I've even made money off of Witch Hat, $600 to be exact, because I ended up getting a licensing deal with Hello Hornet, who was contracted by Kodansha, to use one of my spell videos, like one of my spellbook videos, for their ad campaign on Instagram and Facebook. It was a user-generated content ad campaign, so basically they posted stuff that fans of the series had made for the ads, and I was selected. Funny thing, by the way, I was only told 48 hours before the deadline, and I was told in a YouTube comment. If it weren't for this one guy from the from Hello Hornet specifically tracking me down on the Discord and DMing me, Like, he literally was like, okay, I want this guy in the ad campaign. We're going to hunt him down. And he ended up finding me on the Witch Hat Reddit Discord. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have known, and I would not have made money off of Witch Hat. I'm still in the black, by the way. I'm still profiting off of Witch Hat more than I've spent on it, and I have bought all the volumes except for volume 13, like all the volumes of Witch Hat and Kitchen. I need water. This is basically a diversion, a distraction from me making my spell seminar video. It's coming along well, but I do need a break from it. I can only script write and rewrite my script again and again and again and again so many times before I kind of burn out a little bit, so I'm doing this to avoid that. So next spell I make, what should I do? Can we fit multiple spells on one page? Let's see. So we have Illuminate and we have Flashlight. Are those worth it? You don't have the Witch Hat Kitchen manga in Brazil, okay? That's actually tragic. To be completely honest with you, I mostly just buy the volumes, skim them for spells, and then never pick them up again. That is probably a cardinal sin that I've committed. But I'm so obsessed with this magic system that every time, well, no. It used to be that every time I tried to reread Witch Hat, I would find new spells, but at this point I have every single spell from chapter 1 to like 63 saved in a folder on my laptop, so I don't really have any spells left that I haven't seen from that point. So mostly whenever I read Witch Hat or try to reread it, I run into things that aren't on the wiki, and then I completely go on a tangent and then forget to reread the series. So I have never properly reread Witch Hat, just kind of gone through it, finding stuff for the wiki, getting distracted, and then, what am I doing? I need to focus on spells, Chroma. All right. Panini only published the normal volume. That's a shame. That's a real shame. Yeah, they should get on that, dude. They should totally get on that. Okay, where is the top of the vacuum cleaner spell? It's right there. So there. I don't bother anyone. Nervous when I stand. That's probably copyrighted. I should stop. Okay, my friends have said something very bizarre in the group chat, and I have no idea what they're saying. I have the new grimoire, and I don't think there is new info. New info in regards to what? I used to reread the manga every time a new volume came out, but I stopped at volume 6. That's fair. So up until 6, I have most of the story memorized. Yeah, sometimes, well, I've memorized the entire story because, you know, editing the wiki, doing the magic system, I have basically read the entire manga, like, several times over, just not coherently in one sitting. But, yeah, up until, which volume is it? Up until volume 7, I can more or less remember the chapters, like, or in the ballpark range, like within 2 to 3 chapters where stuff is. New info about spells. Yeah, the recent volume 12 didn't have much spell stuff. 13 did, or maybe it's 14. I'm not sure. It might be 14, but the recent chapters have had a few new spells, mostly centering on the new signs introduced in the volume. What is it? The volume 12 bonus. The volume 12 bonus was like a game changer for the Magic System crew. Like, that introduced so much new stuff. It basically changed everything. I still don't fully understand the Pegasus carriage and the new wind signs that were shown. Like, literally wind signs, not wind sigils, wind signs. So I'm not sure why they are signs and not sigils. I'm not sure what they are. I'm not sure what they do fully. But I have seen the whirling wind sigil, which looks nothing like normal wind, a few times. So I'm starting to get an idea for it. All right, there. What do we draw now? We will do Ice Maker. Ice Maker's boring. Some of these spells don't really deserve entries. I'm going to be completely real with you. We'll do it anyways. Ice Maker. Like, some of my spells, I look at them and I'm like, that's not very original, Chroma. That's like barely even qualifies as a spell worth recording. Volume 14 doesn't exist yet, but yeah, the chapters that are going to be added in Volume 14 do have a lot of new spell details. They do. Thing is, like recently in this current arc, I noticed that a lot of the new spells, up until about 2 volumes ago, were like were very confusing. They didn't make sense. They seemed to have nonsensical designs. But recently, Sensei kind of got back on her game, and started making spells that actually make sense again. So to those that don't know, with Witch Hat spells, you can basically break them down into 3 categories. First, you have the spells that you can look at and you know exactly what they do. So you know the signs, you know the sigils, you recognize everything inside of it. You can just look at it, know what it does, and then call it a day. Those are the ones that are mostly recorded on the wiki, and they're pretty self-explanatory because you can literally tell what they are, tell what they do, that kind of stuff. Then you have spells that you look at them and you can see that there's intent put behind it. So their spells, they have signs and sigils that you might not recognize, maybe a few, maybe more than a few, but they always have a few signs and sigils you do know and some that you don't. And when you look at them, you can tell that there's intent. You can look at them and see a little bit of the thought process behind it, but you don't fully recognize like what it does because you don't understand all the components. It's like trying to solve x plus y equals 3. You don't know the value of x or y, so you can figure out what they do together, but you can't figure out what they do on their own. And sometimes you can't even figure out what they do together because the effect is never shown. And then lastly, you have spells. You look at them and you're like, yeah, I have no idea what Sensei was doing. Because I think sometimes it's really hard to write a series. And most of her brain is probably dedicated to the plot, the characters, the world building, that kind of stuff, which I totally get. It's really hard to focus on the magic system as well. And I think what she does is sometimes she, just to save herself some effort and to like help herself to get the manga out on time, she sometimes will draw spells, like for spells with really complicated effects that are hard to figure out, she'll just draw a spell and call it a day without like really giving it much thought or putting a bunch of nonsensical science in the design. And you can generally tell when she did that, but I don't really consider it a big deal because, you know, she's only human. There's only so much she can do because it's hard to write a series. But yeah, you can generally tell. And in the recent chapters, well, before the recent chapters in the current arc, there were a lot of spells that you could look at them and you're like, yeah, this is nonsense. But recently, I've been noticing that the spells have gone from nonsense to simply things I don't understand. So there's a bit of puzzling we're going to have to do to figure out these new spells, but I think there was intent behind them. I think they were planned out. I think they are. I think Sensei is going back to thinking out each and every spell, which I think might be helped by the occasional gaps we're having in the upload schedule and the fact that the story's kind of like streamlining a little bit right now. But yeah. Can't wait to see if there's going to be an extra page for Volume 14 to have extra spell or world build information. That would be awesome. Whenever they have extra spell chapters, those are always big. Like, those are always huge. What chapter was it recently that we saw where we had a cover that was just covered with spells? That was interesting because it showed us a bunch of stuff we haven't seen in a long time. Okay, so basically back to the spell. Sorry, guys, I kind of went on a humongous tangent. Actually, no, not sorry. It was good. This is Ice Maker. It really does not... It's not very good. And well, it is good, but it's extremely simple. So the basic idea here, you have a water column spell, but with cooling signs. This will make cold water, but we want to make ice. So what we're going to do, so it's cooling on its own can't freeze stuff, probably. The reason I say this is because we see it's involved in the water drop buoy, or I don't remember the official name for the water. Maybe water drop buoy is the official name. But we see it in that, which is the thing from Volume 2, or Volume 1. I think we first see it in Chapter 2. I'll pull it up real quick. Volume 1, Chapter 2. Tetsuya is holding it in the hallway. Is it legal to show this on stream? Guys, I want your opinion. Is it legal to show the manga on stream? Do you think? Like to show the panels? Do you think it would be a problem? Maybe, okay, I'll avoid flipping through it. I'll avoid flipping through the volume. I'll just go to the specific panel I want to show off. Where is Chapter 2? Is this Chapter 3 or is this Chapter 2? This is Chapter 2. So, where is Tetsuya at the start of the chapter, holding the water drop buoy in the hallway. Or is that chapter 3? I think it is chapter 1. Yes, it is. I mean, chapter 2 it is. Okay, so first we see Kifri holding it. It's this thing right here. Basically how it works is it collects water from the air around it and condenses it into this. I think condensation is involved thanks to the cooling signs. And it also does say it gathers moisture from the air rather than generating water on its own. So this does raise an interesting question. Why would you go out of your way to make a spell that gathers water from the surroundings rather than... I'm actually going to pull up the spell real quick. I'll keep talking during that, though. Why would you go out of your way to make a spell that gathers water from the surroundings rather than just creating water? Because we've already seen with stuff like with the Water Shot Seal and the Wave spell that Kifri uses on Sassurin, and I think chapter 27, somewhere around that range. 27, 28, 29, somewhere in that ballpark. We see Kifri, when his fight with Sassurin, use that Wave spell. We see the Water Horse. We see a bunch of water spells that are able to generate water from nothing. So the question would be, why would you go out of your way to make a spell that that specifically gathers water from the surroundings rather than create it? So the main theory that we currently have is based on a system of understanding of the magic system called the energy, like basically the energy theory. It doesn't have an actual name, but the basic idea is that Woodcur ink has energy within it, like a finite amount of energy that it contains, and as the spell operates over time, the energy is gradually drained. We came to this conclusion based on seeing how some spells last longer than others. So essentially, spells that last longer than... So there's some spells that will last like just a few seconds, like stuff like Bolt, which almost instantly stops working. Stuff like Water Shot Seal, which stops working in about a second. And a few other spells like Wall Breaker, which only lasts for a short period. But then you have other spells that have a much lower power output. Stuff like Beast Warding or Light spells or Repetition, Time Stop, Shrink spells, that kind of stuff. Stuff that do less work. They basically keep something in a specific state, or they do a low energy task. Those spells tend to last a lot longer. And what we gained from this is that spells that used more energy typically stopped working sooner than ones that use less. And from this, we basically theorized that spell operates basically on a system of energy. As time goes on, it uses up more and more, and then it stops working. And so, where was I going with this? Okay, yeah. And so with spells like the what is it called? It's listed. Yeah, the Vapor Bubble, which is the thing Kifri's using right here. Oh, wait, no. The volume. Which is the thing Kifri is using right... I need a bookmark. Which is the thing Kifri is using right... Oh, my God. Here. By gathering water from the surroundings rather than creating it, the spell uses less energy and as such is able to last a lot longer. And that makes it so you can use something over a longer period of time. Because if you think about it, if your spell is creating something from nothing, that's going to be pretty expensive on an energy standpoint. But if your spell is simply gathering things from nearby, that's a lot easier. It's like, so you know those heat pump air conditioners? I mean the heat pump house heaters that pump heat from outside? Those use less energy than space heaters, which heat up the interior of your house by just simply using electricity to heat up elements. By pumping heat into the house, it uses less energy because it's taking it from elsewhere rather than just producing it on its own. Same exact concept here. We think that by gathering stuff, you can make your spell last a lot longer than if you just simply created it. So, yeah, interesting side tangent there. But with that spell, we do have cooling signs, but they aren't able to but it doesn't cause the water inside the vapor bubble to freeze. So the thought process here is by adding strengthen signs, we can, by using strengthen signs, we can make it so it freezes stuff rather than just cools them down. Because we've already been shown that cooling on its own is not enough. So, yeah. Next up, we're going to write down the signs. So we got a water sigil in the center. Water. And we have column. Mostly these theories are discussed. They used to be, they've always been there. They're typically discussed on the Witch Hat Atelier Reddit Discord. More accurately, they're in the Magic discussions channel. I talk about stuff there. I also sometimes talk about it with, mostly on Discord. We have these discussions. I'm going to put in my magic system video will go over the energy theory. It's basically because when teaching the magic system to people, I found that using the energy theory is a really good way to like make magic more intuitive. So with the video, I'm going to make a disclaimer that it's not official, but it is a good way to approach thinking about the system. It might be accurate, it might be true, it might be how it actually functions, but we don't know for sure. Yet regardless, it does help to make the system more intuitive and helps to make it easier to understand. So this would be strengthen. Okay, so I have something like OK668. I have something to propose to you regarding signs. So you know how some signs are radially symmetrical, stuff like cooling and what else? Stuff like cooling is radially converged symmetrical. There's no good examples here. Stuff like cooling, repetition, the enlarged sign, the orb sign. What's another example? Crosshair, stuff like that. You know how those are radially symmetrical, so you can split them in half and rotate it, and it would still be symmetric. I think that those. I'm not describing this well. But basically my thought process is, you know how some signs can be inverted, right? Ones with bilateral symmetry, column, strengthen, radial, collection, levitation, those things, they can be inverted because they do have a definite front and a back. With the radially symmetric signs, with those I'm thinking, do you think it's impossible to invert signs like that? Or do you think there's a way to do it? I did not describe it well. It's easier over text. So we got strengthen and then cooling. If you need me to re-describe that because I did a fairly poor job, that's fine. So next up. Sorry, what do you mean sorry? I will pull up a post-it note. Okay, so I will do it with paper and drawing this time. All right, so first up, we have the bilateral spells, bilateral signs. We have stuff like column, levitation, strengthen, crush. What else is there? There is pull, and so on and so forth. These are signs which are bilaterally symmetrical, which means that if you look at a mirror image of them, they look the same on both sides. So if you mirror all these signs, they will look the same. They also have a definite front and a back. So there's a front and a back to these signs. There's a direction that they point. With some other signs, like stuff like float and orb, and what else? What's another example? Float, orb, crosshair, bolt, convergence, I guess, and what's another one? And billowing. These signs don't have a definite front and a back. So there's no front, there's no back. If you rotate them, they look the same. But if you mirror them, they do as well. So rather than being bilaterally symmetrical, which means they have a definite front and a back, they have no defined front, no defined back. You can rotate them in any which way. We've only ever really seen signs like this, the directional ones, which are bilateral, and have a front and a back. We've only really seen these ones be inverted, but we've never seen these ones be inverted. And my thought process behind this is that since these don't have a front and a back, they have no direction in which they point, they can't be inverted because there's no way to make them point the other way. They don't have a front, they don't have a back. It doesn't matter to them. But for ones like these, you can. And you can reverse their effects. What I'm thinking is maybe I don't know if it's even possible to invert these ones. We used to toy with this idea back in the early days, but we kind of ditched it a while back. but I'm starting to think it might be important to address in the future, like with the wiki and stuff, because like how do you invert bolt? How do you invert crosshair? Like you can't. There's no backside. There's no front side. You simply cannot invert them. But with these ones, you can. So, do you think that's an accurate way to think of it? Okay. For some context for you guys, OK668 and I have been like working on the magic system together since like day one. So since like 4 years ago, we've been discussing the magic system. Basically, all the advancements we've made, we've more or less made them all together. So he has as much, they deserve as much credit with developing the magic system as I do. I am just the one that writes it down on the wiki. So even though OK668 is less famous than me, they are just as important, and if not more so. OK668 spells are amazing, guys. My spells, they're typically practical. They're typically things that are meant to achieve a specific goal. They're not always very fun. But OK668, his spells are always really fun. They're always like, I don't know, they just bring joy. They just spark joy within your heart, while mine are all practical. And I do admire OK668 for that. I wish I could make spells as fun as they do. I'm not the only spell maker out there, guys. There are other people just as cool as me. Do not sleep on them. All right, what am I doing? I need to write the description. It makes sense for them to have a mirrored effect. What do you mean a mirrored effect? OK668. What do you mean by that? And a Harridan, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that. What do you mean by compensated? Yeah, so you mean like when you flip them around, they act the same way, or they're inverted? Which one do you mean? That is crooked. I don't like it. All right. So okay, so when you flip them around, they invert. Yeah, so for these ones, flipping around, they invert. These ones, there's not really a way to do that. So I think it might be important to touch on that on the wiki, like break them down by types. It's interesting because the manga never describes these things, but there's simply consequences of how the magic system functions that make it impossible to ignore them. Like as time goes on, even though Shirahama never explicitly outlined these things, we did figure them out on our own, and they've held true. I'm actually surprised by how well it's worked, because like Sensei has no real obligation to make the magic system as cohesive as she does. Like not very many people pay attention to it. Like I'd say alongside me, there's only what 20-25 people that I know of that actually keep track of the magic system like in depth and like study it like on an actual level. Probably maybe even less. So there's not a very big market for her to appeal to by talking about that stuff. I mean, by making sure that stuff is defined and like cohesive. But even though she doesn't talk about it in the manga, the rules she sticks to are still so like well followed, to the point that we're able to figure out the rules without her even telling them to us, which is actually kind of crazy. The fact that we've made these theories years ago and they still hold true, but simply based on the things we've observed in the manga. Our track record for accuracy with our sign predictions has been actually insane. I think there's only like 2 that we've gotten wrong so far, which would be regions, and I think it took us a while to figure out crosshair. But other than those 2, I don't think we've ever been wrong on a sign on how it functions. Maybe bind. Bind took us a while to figure out exactly how it works, and we still don't know for sure, but yeah. Ice Maker creates ice. Boosted with strengthen. It's a cooldown. water column the spell produces. I think I'm going to stream a lot more when I'm doing spell stuff. Okay, I mean balanced. For example, the column 1 must have another one in the exact opposite direction in the spell to throw a column upwards from the spell. Okay, yes, that is an established thing. So, basically, how a spell is oriented is based on the center of the spell. So everything, like, what is considered inverted is solely dependent on the line going from the sign towards the center of the spell. So even though if I translated this sign up here, it would be pointing. So if I translated the sign right here to the top, it would be pointing outwards and as such be inverted. Rather than, but by putting it here, since it's pointing towards the center, it is not inverted. So yeah, you do have to balance them. I'll actually pull up a graphic I made for the wiki. So if you don't have them balanced, you'll get something like this. So you could also achieve this by removing the column size entirely. That would make this jet of water go straight sideways, like straight to the side rather than up at an angle. But by unbalancing it like this, making one more substantial than the other, you do throw off the balance of the spell and send it flying towards the side. Whereas if it were all equal, it would go straight up. You can also angle the signs to make it so they swirl rather than simply going in a straight line. Like, so this is a pull sign, right? It pulls, this is a grasping wind spell. It pulls air in using pull signs and a wind sigil. And if we simply had them face inwards, it would just pull air straight in. But by having them tilted, as well as pulling it in, it also goes straight down. I mean, it straights down and twists at the same time. And if they were simply pointing like completely sideways rather than at an inward angle somewhat, it would swirl the wind around. But by pushing it further past that angle, so it's pointing outside instead, then it would push away, which is sign inversion, essentially. Yeah, but what would happen with the cooling one? So that's a little harder to know. So with things like cooling, which aren't directional, they don't really impart a direction. So stuff like column, you can consider this like instructions on the spell for where to go in a way. So this says, hey, this is where the direction we're going is. It's straight up, right? They define the direction of the spell. They define the intensity. They define like the way, like where it goes and what it does. But stuff like cooling and float, that's more like, instead of instructions for the spell where it goes, they're more like status effects. So like float makes it float, cooling cools it down. Enlarge, I mean, window makes it so it only affects the object the glyph is drawn on. Diamond makes it so it only affects things that the glyph isn't drawn on. They're more like status effects than anything. And because of that, it's kind of hard to figure out what they would do if they're unbalanced. Generally, we do draw them balanced just to be on the safe side. But if you unbalance it, it's kind of hard to figure out what it would do. We still don't know for sure. I think it would be less stable, but I'm not sure to what extent or like how much. Oh, also, okay, I have another thing I want to mention about these directional signs. So with Crush can go in, right? And it can also go out. So, wait, no, I drew them wrong. Actually, no, I drew them right. So Crush can crush or reintegrate or whatever you want to call that effect. But what would happen if you had a spell, right? And you had Crush like that? I'm not sure what that would do. You have any theories? Because I'm not sure if it's fully directional like these ones. It's kind of in between the more status effects of these signs and the directional ones of this. Because you can invert it, but like, what would Crush at an angle do? Yeah, so there are some signs that are a little harder to figure out. It really makes you want to empirically test stuff. Tragic we can't IRL, haha. Exactly. I have wanted to do that for so long. The best we can do is thought experiments. But, you know, we can only get so far with those. Alright, I'm debating. We have a lot of space left on this page. Do I try to fit a small spell in here? Or do I'm going to go on. I'm going to move on. New spell for each one. So this is 5. That gets us 75 divided by 5. Divided by 3, and you get 25. So 15. I'm 1/15 of the way there. Just over. So 1/15 would be less than 10%, but not too terrible. Let's see how that far that is. 5, nope. 5 over 74. 6.7% of the way there. Well, 6.8 if you round. Yeah, so next spell. Okay, how do you come up with ideas for spells? So, that's a good question. If you're just starting off with making spells, there's nothing better to do to come up with examples than think of home appliances. Maybe Lateral Crush can have a weakened effect. That's actually a good idea. Angering it, yeah, make the crush angry, crush more. Angling the crush sign, I think that might actually weaken the effect. That might be useful for spells like Quagmire over here. Quagmire is one of my combat spells. Well, it's very effective as a combat spell. Basically, the idea is you use Crush weakened with an inverted Crush that's smaller, plus crosshair signs and water sigils to manifest water inside the earth. So you crush the earth, you fill it with water, and you use pull signs to suck stuff down. So basically, you get your enemy's feet stuck in the ground, or you use it so you can more easily place objects into the earth. But spells like this, yeah, it wouldn't, like, this is an exact example of where the angled lateral crush having a weaker effect would be useful, because I could cut down on the number of signs by like 4 if I did that here. Okay, so back to how I come up with ideas for spells. When you're starting off, there's nothing better to do than think of kitchen appliances. So how do you make a microwave? How do you make an air fryer? OK's air fryer is amazing, by the way. You can think of like fridges, freezers, microwaves, sinks, faucets, ovens, stoves, fans, space heaters, that kind of stuff. Thinking about like home appliances, that's a good way to get started. From there, a lot of it is just sitting in the chair and thinking. Sometimes you get a flash of inspiration when you're out and about. It's a lot like art in that manner, where you have to get inspired a little bit to come up with a spell. Okay, I'm thinking about maybe offsetting my spells so they're on the side, so I have more room for the signs and sigils. Yeah, that might be a good idea. Yeah, I want them centered, though. Centered is cooler. I can put signs and sigils on the other side. Yeah. I'm going to double down on Chromatic's idea. Home things being appliances, or just... or just utility things are a great start. Yeah. So, starting off with practical ideas is probably the best way to get to dip your toes into magic. And from there, you can kind of branch out a little bit. So far, I literally already have, like, my first ever spell was a vacuum cleaner. I've already gone over this one during the stream, but, like, it's pretty easy to get started. There's oven mitts, like, right here. And a thing to make ice. Like, these are all, some of these are pretty basic spells. Most of my spells are actually fairly basic, by the way. But, yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can do. So, what else? What to draw next? It's going to be something more simple this time. Crystal Orb. I can do Crystal Orb. Crystal Orb will be a little bit more complicated than some of the more simple ones that are coming up, but, you know, it's fine. Alright, so, just right there. I don't mind poking a tiny hole through the page, through the center of my spells, because when I draw the sigil, it covers up that hole, essentially. So, since all sigils are central, making a tiny hole with your compass isn't a big deal. Sometimes people, like, with other forms of art, I can get why compasses might not be attractive because they do poke holes through paper. But with this, like, it doesn't even matter. Because literally, you can see the hole right here, right? Can you even see that? You can kind of see it. As soon as I add this crystal sign, boom. Oh, wait, no, I missed. Boom, it is gone in a flash. Completely vanished. Oh, I messed up the angle. It should be 45 degrees. Oh, gosh darn it. It's closer to 40. I can never do crystal signs. Crystal sigils are probably the hardest sigil to draw, other than Wind Underfoot. Wind Underfoot is harder, but the crystal sign is a close second for the hardest. Crystal sigil is a close second for the hardest sigil to draw. Another great way to start with spells are decoration spells. Just try making pretty spells. Yeah. So my favorite spell of all time, actually, is a fan-made one by OK668. I'm going to just quickly draw a simplified version of it. So the basic idea, so instead of making fireworks out of fire, What if you made them out of light? But the question is, how do you make fireworks with the magic system of Witch Hat? And OK668 came up. Okay, you need an easier name to list off on the stream, because if I say OK, people might not know it's your name, but the numbers, they make it harder. I can't draw circles. Something is wrong with my hand today. But yeah, so you start off with a light sigil in the center, because it's a light spell. But how do you make the fireworks? This is where, like, it's the most elegant solution I've ever seen. You use a rainmaker. You use a rainmaker sign or a sign of rain. I'm drawing one poorly. Rainmaker is probably the hardest sign to draw, like hands down, hardest sign to draw. But you use a rainmaker sign to basically make a rain of light. You make a firework. You make a firework with light instead of with fire. And you can actually do a lot of stuff with this. You can add column signs to make it shoot up. You can do levitation to make it fly up in the air and have a more orbit-like effect. You can use bolts to make it so... Oh, that's a terrible bolt sign. You can use bolts to make it shoot up like a Roman candle. There's a lot of ways you can modify the firework. It's one of the most elegant spells anyone has ever made, in my opinion. But yeah, pretty spells like this, they're just as good and just as valid as the more utilitarian spells. I do think I should give them more of a shot. I think I've used 1 or 2 spells with decorative signs ever, which is frankly egregious. I definitely need to change that. Just try making pretty spells, blame my 12-year-old self. That is so real, dude. So real. All right. Do you think... No, I don't. All right, we're already here. I completely forgot that the last 5 minutes happened. All right, so next up, we are making the... What is the spell? Crystal Orb. So first up, Crystal Orb. We're making an orb out of crystal. Actually, I'll add this part later because it makes more sense if I add it later. So, you're the wizard. You need to ponder your orb. How do you get your orb, guys? How do you get your glowing crystal ball? Quite simple. You start off with the crystal sigil. I'm going to make this bigger. You start off with the crystal sigil in the center. Like I said, this paper is really bad if you have to erase anything. It makes a mess. But you know what? It's fine. Accurate spells are more important than clean paper. And we always make mistakes. So we're going to start off with crystal sigil in the center. Crystal sigil, because it's a crystal orb. Then we're going to add levitation signs. So these will generate the crystal floating above the glyph. Levitation's a little weird because it behaves very differently in different circumstances. Sometimes it lifts object off the ground. Sometimes it generates an orb of the object, and sometimes it propels the object it is drawn on. It propels the object it's drawn on in the case of wind spells. Earth and water spells, it moves the object it's supposed to affect. Sometimes moves itself with earth. And with fire, it creates a floating orb of the material. So it's a little bit of a confusing spell. I mean, it's a confusing sign. But in this case, since it's crystal, which is mostly like earth, it's just going to make the object float above the glyph. And to make it form an orb shape, we're going to add an orb sign. So orb sign here. Orb is interesting. We've seen it once. So you'd think it'd be hard to figure out what it does. But the spell it was in was so ridiculously simple that we could figure it out. Basically, with orb signs, you make your spell basically forms a space above it in which things can fill. So let's say you have a water orb spell, right? Once you complete the glyph, nothing will happen because if you just have the water sign and the water sigil and the orb signs. But if you pour water over your spell, it will collect inside of a spherical shape. So it'll basically act like there's a spherical container there that will gradually fill up. It's hard to see it from that angle. That'll gradually fill up with water as you pour more in. But it can't fill itself on its own. So the idea here is by using levitation to manifest it inside the orb, we can get the orb's shape to form and actually get the crystal orb to develop. So now we want our orb to be a little bit mystical, right? Just having a crystal ball floating above the glyph, you know, it's cool and all, but what's the crystal doing? It's not doing anything. It's just sitting there looking fancy. It might as well be glass, right? Just glass hanging from a string. So what you want to do is make it a little more fancy. How I do this is I will add a light sigil so it glows. The light will want to fill the exact same space. Normally, I would use a crosshair sign to get the light to manifest inside the crystal, but crystal is transparent, and the light will basically be filling the exact same space that the crystal is in the first place. So I don't really need to worry about that. Normally, I would use crosshair, though, for anything else. So here we're getting light sigils. This will manifest light inside the orb, make it glow. And then we're going to add some tiny little... two more tiny little levitation signs right here. Oh, that's not centered. The effect of these basically being that they will make the orb spin, so it'll look a little bit more mystifying. This is one of the few decorative spells I've developed so far. OK 6 and State's better at them, in my opinion. Wouldn't the convergence sign pointing to the center have the same effect in this case instead of the orb? So the idea here is we want a large orb. If it was convergence, it might be like... It might also form a spherical object. I don't know for sure. But it wouldn't be, like, as substantial, I'm thinking. So with convergence, basically convergence just focuses the spell. It might just make... If I use convergence, it might just make a pillar of crystal instead. Not entirely sure. But by using orb, I do guarantee that it will be in an orb shape. And then lastly, we're going to add some float signs so we can get the orb just for some good measure. So normally float signs, they affect the thing that the spell is drawn on rather than the things like other things nearby. But you know, it's fine if the pedestal for the orb floats in the air, that's just even more mystical. So, you know, it's whimsical, guys. We're the wizard pondering our orb, or in this case, the witch pondering our orb. I have a question for the people of chat, for the wonderful people of chat. Do you align more with the brim hats, or like ideologically, do you align more with the brim hats or the pointed hat witches? I need to find that spot. There we go. Crystal orb. This time we will get level text instead of the mess I've had before. Brims, although in manga they are shown as freaks, yes. So I think there's something interesting that myself and a few other fans have noted in the past. The brim hats aren't a unified group. We have Sasarin's faction, well, Igwin's faction, which contains himself and Sasarin. By the way, OK68 has an awesome Sasarin cosplay. You guys should check it out. So you have their faction. They're basically, their goal is to use magic however they want. They want complete freedom. They don't want restrictions. They just want everyone to be able to do whatever they want. On the other hand, you have people like Ininia's group faction, where while we don't know what they want for sure, we don't know if Resty is manipulating Ininia or anything, but we know that what their goal is, their primary goal, is healing magic. So there's a bunch of fixed factions of Brim Hat that are kind of just lumped together by the Pointed Hats, despite having different ideologies. And personally, I align more with the healing witches. I mean, with the witches healing craft, which are technically extinct. But I have made my own. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. Ah, the phone fell. Yeah, my rig for keeping this thing up is kind of janky. I'll just show it again. Literally, this is what I have. I have to unplug my phone. I have this. We have the power cord. I'll just get that over there. We have the clamp with the string tied to it, and then we have this stick. I'm glad the camera didn't point at my face. That would have been bad. We do not want to get doxxed here. But yeah, I personally align more with the healing wishes, even though they're a dead faction. Like you can see here that I have developed a healing spell in the past. The thing with making forbidden magic, oh shit, that's not good. The thing with making forbidden magic is that it's fairly difficult because you have to, like, this is the only forbidden spell I've ever successfully made. Basically how it operates is these two spells on the side, they're strictly for drawing out the bandage. So basically you draw the spell on a bandage, right? You draw it on a bandage, and it's meant to help deal with wounds. So this part here dries out the bandage specifically, but not the wound. It does that through, it's a drying spell, but with window signs there, so it only affects the object it's drawn on. This way you can help the blood to clot faster without drying out the wound and causing cell damage. You have it on both sides, linked to the center spell. This part right here has strengthen signs and wind signs. So basically, I mean, in winding, I forgot the exact name for the sign, but basically what the strengthen signs do, they strengthen the spell. What the wind signs do is they make it so that the bandage automatically wraps around the affected area, so you can instantly deploy this thing. And then in the center, you have a bind sign. What bind does is it makes the bandage adhere to the skin. And then you have inverted crush spells. I mean, inverted cut spells, weakened though. I doubt cut would be able to seal up the wound or even do that much at all, but it might help the clotted blood to have a little bit more consistency. So the wound is a little bit more like well bound a little bit better together by the spell itself, so it doesn't separate as easily. And these pull signs help to pull the sides of the wound in closer so that you can exert pressure, keep it from opening up again. With this spell, it doesn't use any forbidden signs. I had to think really hard about how to do this. So you can make forbidden magic meant for forbidden purposes using the base signs we have, but without the explanations for how the forbidden signs and sigils work, it'll be really hard to make anything more complicated. That doesn't just use basic signs and sigils. Yeah, as you can see, I'm a brim hat. I identify as a Witch of Healing Craft. That is simply who I am. Pointed hats. They have some good points, but they're also wrong in a lot of ways. So I have a problem with my spellbook. It appears that some of my pages are separating. That's not good. We'll see how this goes. In the future, this might be a problem. I might have to redraw some pages again, but you know what? That's fine. An unfortunate thing with my old spellbook is that the cover is starting, like the wood on the cover is starting to come off or delaminate. I glued it on with Elmer's glue, so I'm not very surprised about that. But I might have to scrap my spellbook and redraw it at some point. This spellbook, though, this is for each individual spell, not for a collection of them. So this would be the Crystal Orb spell. Oh, some messages in chat. Let's see. Waiting for the anime, I only learned the magic system. You only learned the magic system? Dude, that's kind of crazy. So if you're going to learn the magic system, I recommend you look up the Witch Hat Atelier Telepedia wiki. Rather, the independent Telepedia wiki rather than the fandom one. It's hard to find on Google search because fandom is just so dominant in the Google search, Google search engine. I think they might be paying Google off, though I'm not sure, though I'm not certain. But if you go on Edge, or go to the @WHA_wiki on Twitter. Actually, let me just go and confirm that real quick. You can find the independent Witch Hat wiki, where while the fandom wiki has like, let me pull it up real quick. The fandom wiki only has 377 pages, while the independent one has 517. And it's much higher quality, much better maintained, a lot more content. And the magic system stuff on the independent wiki is a lot better, a lot more accurate, a lot more fleshed out, a lot more current. Basically, everything on there we wrote, but then we left. We left the fandom wiki after fandom, without warning, deleted the Spanish wiki, the Spanish Witch Hat wiki. They did it without warning. We weren't able to recover the wiki, and as in protest, and also to avoid the ads, we migrated to the independent one. But yeah, the magic stuff on the independent wiki is great. Check it out if you need to learn. We have videos explaining some concepts. We have helpful graphics to learn. Yeah, great resource. Written by yours truly, with some help. Okay, 668 did a few pages, as did a few other users that I can't remember off the top of my head at the moment. But I wrote the bulk of it. It's crazy. When I started learning the magic system, when OK668 and I started learning, we only had each other, really. There was no resources for the magic system. We had to figure out everything all on our own, and it was a struggle at first, especially at the beginning. It was really hard to figure things out because we didn't have a good basis. We didn't fully understand the system. But as time went on, the wiki grew, and now people that are completely new to the magic system can easily pick it up and just learn how to make spells on their own, which is something we never had the luxury of, and we are glad that so many new spell makers can come into existence now. Let me see what's in chat. All right. There's an extension on Firefox that shows you independent wikis instead of the fandom ones. Indie Wiki Buddy. That extension is also on Google Chrome. You can literally install this extension in just 3 clicks. That's all it takes. So it's actually pretty crazy. Also, fandom has so many ads and so many pop-ups that it is the complete opposite of user-friendly. I agree with you that it is terrible. And they have the Witch Hat Atelier one into their database. Yeah, I submitted the Indie Wiki Buddy browser extension. I submitted the GitHub pull request. Well, not the GitHub pull request. The GitHub code modification for the Witch Hat Atelier wiki. I submitted that and they approved it. So yeah, we're chill. All right, so I need to write the description now. I am making less progress than I thought I was because I've been having so much fun talking. I will be real with you guys. Making spells on like doing the spellbook stuff on stream is so much easier than doing it on my own because it's a lot easier to focus. Well, it's more fun, more enjoyable to work on it on stream where I can actually share it with other people than it is on my own. So this is very fun for me. All right, what do we do? Crystal Orb. This spell uses levitation. To produce what is interesting to watch, Clive? Produce a, what am I writing? An orb of science produce a floating, yeah, floating. Orb of crystal. You know so much, oh, about the stream, yeah. I know so much about Witch Hat. Yeah, this has been my life. Well, not my life, but a huge part of my life for a little over 4 years now. So I think I started reading September, like single-digit days in September of 2020. Or 2021. Yeah, 2020. So I've been here a while. You're new to the community? Well, we are glad to have you, Clive. Something weird about Witch Hat fans is if one of us gets our friends to read Witch Hat, I've noticed that we have a weird habit of using cult terminology to describe the event. So basically like, oh, I converted so-and-so to Witch Hat, or I've indoctrinated blank into the fandom. And I'm like, bro, they're going to think we're a cult if we keep this up. We got to chill. All right. What word would you use to describe these levitation signs that are pointing sideways? So like, would you say they're tangential to the center of the spell? They're parallel? Like, what word would you use to describe something pointing that way in respect to the middle of the circle? Because tangential is specifically for something that's running parallel along the edge of the circle. So I'm not sure what word to use to define this. So I can't write until I know this word. Something parallel to the outside of a circle inside a circle. Word for tangential to a circle, but it is on the inside. Internal tangent, that's not a good word. Inscribed, no. Oh, wait. No, never mind. Lateral, I guess I could say lateral. Lateral definition. Definition. No. I could say it. I'll just say tangential. tangential works here. Small levitation signs. Levitation. How do you spell that? I cannot spell today. Levitation. I don't think there's a word. It's a circle, so any direction is parallel to a tangent. Yeah, that's true. But I mean, like, yeah. I've needed this word on so many occasions when doing stuff with the magic system. If there's one word I could add to the English language, it would be a word for this. I need to work on planning before I write stuff. Tangential to the center of the glyph. Impart a slow spin. A gentle rotation. I might have to invent a word, you're right. We already have nested glyphs, nested spells, or sigils, or sign, or whatever. Nested seals, or nested glyphs. We have those. We have linked spells. We already have some terminology we've invented, but yeah. Light sigils cause it to glow. And lastly, and the float signs. The seal itself to float. How do you spell itself? Is it 2 T's? Or is it 1 T? It's 1 T. I'm so bad at English, guys. My spelling is terrible. In midair. All right. I will say writing how the spell works is my least favorite part of this, because it means I can't really talk with you guys. I have to focus on that, and it's also my handwriting's bad. It's hard to manage the pencil. But yeah, we're back. We're back in the fun times, guys. We're back in the fun times. So yeah. So here we have the orb sign. I'm gonna try and start them off always by doing the sigil first, because you know the sigil is the most important part of the spell. With a few exceptions. The sigil is the most important part. Speaking of sigils, recently we had a development with the magic system that actually made us extremely happy. So for a long time, repetition has been, repetition is basically something that, when you draw repetition in a spell, repetition is related to time. So what happens is, how do I describe this without spoiling it? All right, so I have to rethink how I'm going to talk about this without spoiling the thing that happened. All right, yeah, I figured it out. So for a long time, we knew repetition as a sign that caused any object it affected to basically get stuck in a time loop. So let's say I have this this ruler, right? This ruler's made of metal. Let's say I bent it, like permanently, like bent it so hard that it like folded a little bit. You know what I mean? So like you can bend metal and it will spring back, but like if you bend it past a certain point, it won't spring back. Imagine if I did that. I'll just get a paper clip actually. So imagine if I bent a piece of metal to the point where it cannot bounce back to its previous position. Normally, that object would be stuck in the bent state. However, if it was affected by repetition, it would be reverted back to the state where it was not bent. Let's say, so I'll demonstrate real quick. So, yeah. So with this right here, this paper clip, let's say I bend it. If it was under the effect of repetition, it would automatically bend back into its original shape, or at least the shape it was in at the time the spell was drawn. The thing with repetition, though, is another example of this would be, let's say you have a piece of paper and you crumple it up. Repetition would be able to uncrumple that piece of paper. It basically, what it does is it doesn't stop an object from changing, but once it does, it will revert it back to how it was before it's changed. Yes, it does work on people. So we haven't seen it used on people, but I think in chapter 20 something, Coco and Agate and like the entire atelier, all the girls were basically discussing how they could potentially save Uni, like turn him back to normal. And Coco suggested using a repetition sign. But what Agate said is that wouldn't work. It would basically trap him in a time loop forever. So, like, let's say you use it on a person, right? What changes would occur to a person? The changes that would occur to you would be losing moisture due to breathing and your body filtering your blood to form urine. That would be reset constantly. Forming new memories, which is a physical process, that would be interrupted constantly and reverted back. Moving your arms and your fingers and stuff, that would be reverted constantly. Basically, anything that's happening in your body, any change that's occurring would be undone. So you could be like, let's say I'm twisted your arm. As soon as I let go, it would twist right back. So you'd basically be stuck in that one specific moment, just instantly being reset back to it. So due to that reason, Agate basically ended up saying, Coco, this wouldn't work. She listed what would happen, and then they moved on from that idea. But we do know that it would absolutely affect people as well. So yeah, that's a fun thought. It was a very fun thought, not really. But for a long time, in regards to repetition, we noted it acted more like a sigil than anything. Because repetition is like, it's basically time magic. It's its own category of thing. And there seem to be like cases in which you can use it that differ on a... So just like how you can make a bunch of different kinds of fire spells, you can make a bunch of different types of repetition spells. And due to that, we kind of internally like came to the conclusion that maybe repetition is a sigil, not a... oh, it's Connie. Hi, Connie. I haven't seen you in a while. But we basically came to the conclusion that repetition acts a lot more like a sigil than a sign. But since it was still called a sign in the manga, we basically ended up still referring to it as such. However, in the Volume 12 bonus, the Volume 12 bonus is the root of all things, it seems, we noticed that they changed its name from a sign to a sigil, from the sign of repetition to the sigil of repetition. So that was an extremely validating moment for us because it showed that we actually understood how it worked and like had managed to grasp the concepts of signs and sigil to a point that we could tell when something was wrong even before. Sorry, I got school, so spells are on the back burner, but I love to see that you are still cooking. Yep, I'm also in school right now, Connie. I only recently got back into the magic system after the first semester. Its first semester was kind of rough for me, so I didn't have much time for spellmaking or much energy for it, but now I'm doing a lot better. I don't have much homework. I'm not behind on anything right now. I'm doing good. So, yeah, spell streaming. All right, so we have crystal. We have orb. Orb. I like orb. It's crazy that we have only seen orb once, and we already know exactly how it works. It was just in a very special spell, like a spell so simple that we could instantly figure out how it functioned. And I'm extremely thankful for that. I'll just refer to levitation as Lev from now on. Then we have float. Float. Nope, that's a terrible A. I wonder when my roommate will get back. I might have to mute the stream when that happens. Well, probably not. I'll probably just keep yapping. Though I am more comfortable streaming if he's not here. I have no issues with my roommate. It's kind of weird to be on stream talking about my like hyperfixation, my obsession when other people are nearby and it's not online. Oh no, I made an error. I waited to do light until too late. Oh well. I wanted to put light next to crystal. Totally get it. Ponder the orb, exactly, bro. When I first made the spell, I posted it with the image of the orb pondering thing, and I thought I was funny, but not many people found the joke funny. So, that was a little sad. I hope you guys understand though, right? You guys totally get it. You get the joke. You're cool. You're not lame like them. Yeah. All right. So we have that. Crystal Orb Ponder. Next spell. We have 6 spells down. We are... It was funny. I agree. It's funny. Ponder the orb like a good wizard. I wonder, with my spell video, I've actually noticed this. The fact that all witches are called witches, even if they're male, actually like required me to add like 2 extra sentences to the video just to make it clear that witches was like a general term and not specifically for females, which I find kind of funny, like considering how the general populace views this kind of stuff. I was like, oh, I have to account for the lack of experience of others. And so, yeah. All right, next we will do... Oh, I don't like this spell. This spell's really hard to draw. Tough crowd. We love the orb. Also, have you not info dumped to your roommate yet? No. Me and my roommate, So with Witch Hat, I tend not to info dump it much. You know, it's a lot to get... It's a lot to describe, and people generally... They aren't, like... They have some interest in it, but, like, not enough to really warrant me describing it in depth. They're like, oh, that's pretty cool. But, like, they don't really develop much of an interest in the magic system, so I tend to not talk about it much. All right, I'm gonna cheat a little bit, guys. Well, actually, no, I have to cheat with this spell because of how hard it is to draw. All right, so we have our center. Our center is made. Next, we need... guidelines are bad. So the next spell I'm making is Humidifier. This spell uses a Rainmaker rune or a rain sign, which are really hard to draw. And I need to do some planning before I do it. Otherwise, the spell will turn out horribly. But yeah, it's my least favorite sign. It is useful, like, and it's really cool in the fireworks spell that OK made. But I hate making it. I hate drawing it so much. Because you have to be really precise with your curves, and it's really hard to do that. So we're going to cheat with the protract, with the compass, to ensure that I have the correct lines. All right, let's shift that down. There we go. Where's the center? There it is. Is that 45 degrees? I don't know. Oh well. It is what it is. I'll just do this. Okay, extending from the center. We have that right there. Move it over. Boom. Boom. Right angle to that. Boom. I hate the sign. It is my least favorite. Well, to draw. I like it. I like how it works. I don't like making it. All right, let's see. I believe you have to put both parts in the sigil. There was an example in the manga when Coco broke a glass jar of ink. What are you referring to? Oh, wait. So, you're... Okay, I see. So imagine I make a spell with a repetition sigil to affect something that's inside the spell. And I put a stick on it, and then I break it, and then I put it back. This would revert its state, right? Okay, so... In the case of breaking something, it might be different. So what we've seen so far with magic, as a loose rule, it's a potential rule. We don't know how accurate it is, but there is a, or if this is even a thing, but there is a prevailing theory that with magic, you can't undo something that's been broken. So take integration, for example. So I'm going to pull up. I don't have any good images. Okay, so, I have the volume. We're fine. We're chill. We're groovy. All right, so remember when Coco got sick and Tarso had to use that spell to remake, like to figure out, Tarso had to figure out what medicine to get Coco. But since he has Silver Wash, he couldn't tell which one was which. So what he ended up doing is he ended up drying out the spells so he could drying out the medicine so he could reduce it to powder. But he wasn't able to identify each one based on color alone. So because he has Silver Wash, right? So what he ended up doing is he made a spell with inverted crush signs. So as we know, crush, what it does is it reduces something into a powder. So it reduces stuff into powder. But if you invert it, what it can do is it can remake the shape that the object was originally had with that powder. However, like this, it basically makes the powder go into the position it would be if it was still one cohesive object. Basically, it makes like a hologram out of the powder of what the object used to be. But the thing is, even though it is the inverse of crush, and you would think it would be able to undo the crushing, it unfortunately cannot. It's only temporary. As soon as the spell is removed, it goes back to being basically nothing again. It goes back to being powder. And so the thing with this, where was it going to go with this? So as we see here, you can't undo crushing. So you can't undo breaking the spell, right? Or breaking the object, right? Same thing we see the same thing with the counterclock seal, with the ink pot that got smashed. Even though the counterclock can undo an ink pot being broken, it can only do this for 24 hours. And once that time is up, it'll go back to being broken again. So what we see with magic is that once something breaks, it can't really be unbroken. We also see this with Tristis. Tristis was a witch from the days before the Pact who tried to bring back someone who had died, like his loved one, or his or her loved one, I don't actually know. And what ended up happening is the spell, even though they made a spell that should have worked, it ended up actually not functioning properly. And the entire Silverwood forest, like an entire forest of Silverwood trees, ended up getting killed, being blackened essentially, as a result of the damage caused by this spell. So basically the universe said, nah, bro, you cannot undo this, and prevented the death from being undone. So the main thing we're thinking here is that magic can't undo something that's been broken or lost. Like once something has been destroyed or ceased to be what it was before, it can't be restored by magical means. With repetition, this might apply there too, where if you break something, repetition can't undo that. I don't know this for sure. We haven't seen repetition be tried on breaking something, or like even the idea be thrown around. So we can't actually say definitively one way or another. But I think it's a pretty safe bet based on what we've seen so far that that's how it works. Now there's one exception to this rule of not being able to undo something once it's been done, which is the wash barrel. So the wash barrel is a contraption we see during the Great Hall arc that basically once you put your clothes in, if they're damaged, they will be returned to being good as new, like, quote, good as new, whatever that means. And basically, let's say you had a piece of fabric that you embroidered, and over time it got frayed, right? If you tried to restore the object, not only would it be unfrayed permanently, the embroidery would also disappear because that's not good as new. So I'm not really sure what that point is defined as, but this spell can undo things. The problem with this is, like, there's a big problem with this though, wherein if the spell is capable of doing that, then theoretically you could use that instead of counterclock to just repair anything. And if that were truly the case, the entire current arc of the manga would be invalidated. So for the sake of plot consistency, I've basically, like, me and a few other people have chosen to like just treat the wash barrel like it doesn't exist, because Shirahama has retconned stuff in the magic system before. And whenever she retcons something, it's always good. Like, it makes the magic system more cohesive. It makes it make more sense. It makes it, it basically improves the magic system whenever she retcons stuff. Because she specifically focuses on things that are logically inconsistent, or, like, sometimes she makes an error drawing a spell in the volume release, she will fix it. She'll change the name of something later on down in the series, like with the, turning the repetition sign into repetition sigil. They've all been upgrades. And what I'm thinking is she's probably trying to do a soft retcon. She's probably soft retconning the wash barrel in her head, because simply by existing, it invalidates the entire current arc. So even though there is one point of evidence to dispute the theory that magic can't undo something once it's broken or once it's been changed like for real, like damaged, worn, altered in some way that's not reversible, I'm choosing to ignore the wash barrel for that because, as I said, it causes plot holes simply by existing. So it's better to ignore it than to simply treat it as if it's canon. You know what I mean? Okay, let's read chat. I've been yapping for ages. Okay. Unfortunately, no infinite cloning spell. I think, yeah, no infinite cloning spell. All right. It just temporarily fixes the item, but not permanently. Exactly. Yep. What part of the manga are you at? Okay. All right. The only thing is what counts as broken. Seems pretty arbitrary / intuitive. Yeah. So it's not very well defined. Like, for example, the one instance where we saw repetition used to undo physical changes was the Serpent's Bed of Sand. I'll actually pull that spell up. So just for those of you that are curious about what I've been drawing, this is just a rain sigil. I'm a rain sign. I'm really bad at them, so I had to break out the compass. So let's pull that up. Serpent's Bed of Sand. So this was the spell. Oh, I misclicked. Guess not. All right, so the Serpent's Bed of Sand is a spell we saw used early on in the manga. I think chapter 7, to basically make a bed for the dragon to lie on so it wouldn't wake up. Here we have wall breaker signs arranged in a circle with a billowing collection sign in the middle. So what wall breaker does, as we've discussed several times so far, is it reduces things down to rubble, basically. It turns stone into dust or into sand, turns plants into powder. And here we have billowing collection. What this does is it has collection signs, so it's able to collect the dust produced by these spells, and then billowing produces a cloud, so it's able to create a cloud out of the sand produced by these crush wall breaker spells. Yeah. And then on the outside, though, we have this repetition spell. So basically why they used repetition in this case is because if they simply used the billowing collection spell to make the cloud, what would end up happening is once the dragon sat on it, the cloud would collapse under the dragon's weight and it would no longer be fluffy anymore. But by using repetition, they're able to force the cloud basically to keep its shape so that it basically makes it firmer. So as soon as it starts to crush, it gets uncrushed. It basically makes it so it buckles, but it doesn't break. You know what I mean? So it makes it so instead of just getting smushed down, it has some tangibility. You're able to sit on it. So the same thing would be true for the paper, the crushing paper example. Now, I'm not sure if it could undo crushes because those are like creases. You can't really undo a crease, but it might make it so it doesn't crease in the first place and then springs back. But yeah, it is pretty arbitrary what's defined as broken or not. It's for that reason that we're not really sure exactly. Time magic has always been confusing in whatever piece of media you're looking at, and or time travel in general. Repetition, I'd say, is pretty good as far as time stuff is concerned. Like, it's the one Witch Hat time spell that I fully get, like I fully understand. Stuff like counterclock, though, counterclock is a little confusing because with counterclock, you can't undo something that happens, right? You know what? I'll draw a diagram. So let's say you're Dagda, right? You are Dagda. You got shot. Oh, door. You get shot with an arrow. And now you are wounded, right? You're going to die. So you're going to die. But Aninia comes in, and she saves you with the counterclock seal. I can't draw it. It's extremely complicated, so I'll just do this to represent it. Counterclock rewinds you to 24 hours before you had the arrow lodged in your body, or before you got shot. And so now you're fine. However, 24 hours later, you will return to being a porcupine. Well, you'll regain your wounds. The arrow will be gone, but you'll regain your wounds and you will be injured again. So basically you can think of it like this. So we have the time when you're shot, and once you are repetitions, you go back to before. So now you're running in a parallel time stream. So for 24 hours, things can happen as normal. Changes can happen to your body. You can eat, you can form memories, you can sleep, you can... What do we do? What else? You could, like, I don't know. Things can happen, right? But as soon as the 24 hours is up, you get sent back to here. The question is, if you can't undo death and you can't undo damage, what happens if you get injured while you're on this time? Like, while you're on the rewind of time, what happens if you get hurt? That's the main question I have with repetition. I mean, with counterclock. What happens if you experience a physical change while you're on the rewinded time? Does it make it so that once you come back, the effects stack? So you have the wound from the arrow and whatever new wound you experienced also? But I'm not sure if this is how it works, because if you form memories while you're on counterclock time, as soon as you get reset, you lose those memories. So not all changes carry back over. So what defines when something happens and when it doesn't? We don't really know. Why this is concerning to me is because of how they managed to kill the leech. What they did to take out the leech is they basically took the leech. So first we have the leech being normal, right? The leech is a normal curtain leech. It's completely typical. Then it consumes the blood and the ink from the illicit contraption seller, the pervert guy with the glasses, and then it becomes supercharged. So it's like, I'm angry leech now. And then how they ended up killing it is they rewound the leech. So they rewound it, turned it back into this, and then they killed the damn thing. So it's dead now. So skull, bam, dead. So my question is, once the 24 hours are up, what's going to happen? Is the leech going to come back? Is it going to turn back into this? Is it going to stay dead? Has the cycle been broken because it died and so it now can't return to how it was before? I don't know. I'm waiting for the next 2 chapters. It might be explained then. Maybe it's not going to be. If the leech doesn't come back, we know that if you die when you're on counterclock time, the counterclock spell is basically negated. You can't return to how you were before. But if you're not killed, you do go back to where you were before. But if we see it come back, then that's really bad. Because I'm sick of this arc. I'm sick of the leech. I don't want it to come back. I'm praying that's not how the spell works. And if it is how the spell works, I'm pretty sure Beldroot wouldn't have allowed Coco to go through with this plan, because it wouldn't have worked. And he's pretty knowledgeable. Like, he knows how the spell works. Kifri knows how the spell works. Kifri taught how it works to Coco. So I'm assuming, based on context clues, that if you die when you're on counterclock time, you cannot go back to how you were 24 hours before, because that's a change that can't be reversed. Maybe if that happens, they stack. Maybe it will become a huge dead leech, but I don't know. I am kind of worried though, but we're gonna cross our fingers and hope that the leech arc is over. Yeah, because I'm sick of the leech arc. I want things to happen again. All right, back to drawing the spell. So this is humidifier. The purpose of the spell is to make a room more humid. So now we're going to draw my second least favorite sign. Whoop-de-doo. It is billowing, the one we just described from the Serpent's Bed of Sand. Wow, guys, see how it's all connected? All spells have the same base concept. Billowing is another thing that I think, Billowing is probably a sign, because it doesn't produce anything specific. It modifies things that already exist. But it's a little bit more sigil-like than most signs are. I think it's a bit of a continuum. There are some signs like Vision and the Eye sign, which I don't know what they do on their own. On its own, Vision has something to do with sight, because we see it in Kifri's glasses. But when it's combined with the Eye sign, it produces illusions. I'm thinking that it might not be a sign, and it might be a sigil instead. Now, with the Vision and Eye sign, we don't actually have names for them. We just made names ourselves. There are a lot of signs like that, where we figure out what they do, and then we had to form our own names and stuff. So we're going to put inverted strength in here, because we don't want a cloud. We want a mist, right? We want mist for the billowing sign. I'll explain this in a minute. But what was I talking about just now? I was talking about... Guys, remind me, what was I talking about like 3 seconds ago, before I talked about the strength and signs? I completely forgot. Okay, yeah, so Vision, so since it makes illusion magic specifically, it's a lot like Repetition, where Repetition creates time magic. Like, specifically, it makes magic that impacts time. It makes things that loop. It makes stuff that's, it basically resets the object, right? But with Vision, it does kind of the same thing. Or Vision and Eye together, they kind of do the same thing, where instead of modifying other magic, they create their own kind, which in this case would be illusion magic. And so what I think is that they might actually just be a sigil. This is really bad. Okay, yeah. This part of the page is totally blackened by my mistakes. This paper is really not great. It does feel amazing, like to scroll through. Like it feels like an authentic spellbook when you touch it. But God, it's really bad for erasing anything at all. I'm kind of making some progress, but when I erase like this, guys, literally what's happening is the paper is peeling off the top layer, so I can get the dark stuff off. Come on, don't be too destructive. Witch Hat Atelier would have killed as a Nintendo DS game. Okay, so I will say this thing right now. Witch Hat's magic system is more complicated than Noisha. It would be so hard to code Witch Hat as a video game. I've seen 2 people try. One came a lot closer than the other, but I've seen 2 people try and they both gave up on the project. And these are people that are like experienced coders in Unity. I don't think it's possible to make the entire magic system as a game, not without like literally a AAA team to figure all this stuff out, because it is extremely complicated. How you would even code, like you'd have to code sigil recognition for drawing. Maybe you just do a system where you like have the sigils as like vectors, like as elements, and you paste them into a circle. But even if you don't draw it and you have it so you paste them in, you'd still need extremely complicated like emergent behaviors to be coded. Like, how would you combine orb and levitation to make a floating, like to make an orb that floats overhead? Or what's an extremely complicated one I could talk about? Quagmire, for example. You create mud by manifesting water inside of earth, and by crushing the earth to make like, you crush the earth to make sand and then manifest water inside of it to make mud. How would you even code that? What if you didn't even plan for Quagmire? Like, you didn't even plan for that situation and someone tries to do it in the game. It'd be really hard to code it so that you can guarantee that it would work. And you'd have to do that you'd have to make it so it works for literally anything a player or a user would throw at it. So yeah, this page is a little trashed, but you know what? It's fine. I don't love this spell. We will do better next time, guys. We'll do better next time. It looks a little rough, but it's fine. So coding it as a game would be extremely hard. Like, I personally would never even attempt it. Not without, like, an actual AAA, not AAA, maybe double A budget. Maybe a double A game studio could do it, but I don't. An indie person? No way in hell. Maybe just AI guesses the spell effects. That could be something, but, yeah, you could do that. AI might actually be a good solution for that. But then you need but integrating AI with something that's like, I think if you wanted to integrate AI, you'd have to have the AI determine what to do with a physics system, rather than the AI generate like some image or something. Like, you have a physics system that the AI interacts with, and it tells it what to do. Maybe if you did that, it would work. You could manage it, but you need a lot of testing data. And, like, imagine you update the AI, and then a bunch of spells break. Like, they stop working how they are supposed to. I think AI actually might be the way to do it. I don't know if it's even feasible to do it any other way, now that I think about it. Okay, so how this spell... Uh-oh. I forgot something. That's not good at all. All right. We're doing this again. All right, so here we have water sigil. Water sigil. Thank God these are so narrow, but the next ones won't be. Uh-oh, I messed that up. So 2 water sigils. Yeah, I should have made this bigger. Wind. Basically yikes. Yikes. I don't have room for this here. I have just barely enough to squeeze this thing in here. Basically the idea here for this spell, we have billowing, makes a cloud, right? But billowing is weakened with inverted strengthen. So instead of creating a cloud, it would be more like a mist. You have water and air. So it generates a mist of water and air, which would be basically just tiny little droplets in the air. Then you have dispersion to distribute it evenly in all directions. And yeah, that's basically the spell idea. So it would be a little bit more like a mister than a humidifier, but, you know, I'm not adding heat to vaporize the water right now. I don't feel like it. All right, let's see what's in chat. Oh, like an infinite craft situation. Yeah, something like that. In my mind, it would be like a prompt style thing. It would appear in the bottom screen and you just trace over the prompt. Yeah, you could do that. yeah, for a kid, for like a DS game, that absolutely makes sense. You could code individual spells. Yep. The air fryer is a spell I made. The spell books are spells that only Chromatic did. Yeah. Oh, is the air fryer? Okay, so Connie asked if the air fryer's in here. Yes, I did not make the air fryer. That was Okay's spell. These are just my spells. Currently, currently what I'm doing is I am transcribing all my spells from my main spell book into this one. And I'm adding descriptions for each spell. So I can basically, rather than just having... So, like, you've probably seen my spell book. Basically, what it has is I just vomited all my spells. You know what? We're not doing it like this. We're doing it like this. Uh-oh. Okay. So what I essentially did is I vomited all my spells into one book, all 74 of them, with just a title to tell you what they do. No explanation of how they work, no list of what signs are inside, just straight up 74 spells shoved in here. And so what I'm doing now is I got this nice new spell book. The paper quality is a little meh, but, you know, I think it's awesome. The paper feels nice. It's just really bad if you have to erase it. What I'm doing now is putting every single spell I've made in here with a description, so I can actually show what my spells do while telling people what they do as well. So, like, I can show the spell and say, hey, this is what it does, without having to describe it every single time I show it off. Also, I just want a good, comprehensive, like, actual spellbook, not a compilation. All right, yeah, this is really messy looking, but it's fine. Is this centered? That's centered. Okay. Have you done washer-dryer spell? I have not done a washer-dryer spell. I should do that. Technically, I do. Well, no, I don't need a dryer spell. There's already spells to do that. I wonder if you... Maybe... Okay, so there is the drying spell, which is technically called Rainflinger. Rainflinger is one of those spells that's been retconned or potentially retconned a few times. We aren't sure which version. We know that there's one version that's modern, but we're not... And that there's one version that's retconned, but we aren't sure if the other variant it had has also been retconned or not. But the drying spell, basically, how it's known currently, I'll actually just showcase my healing magic spell because it has it. So take this spell right here and remove the 2 window signs. That's what the drying spell is, Rainflinger. And how it works is it has crosshair to manifest fire inside water. So water's in the center. It's the biggest sign. Sigil. So it's the dominant one in the spell. What crosshair does is it makes it so the secondary effect of the spell, or whatever the spell does, will manifest inside of what the dominant thing is supposed to be. So in this case, manifest fire inside of water. And that basically makes the water evaporate, drying stuff out, without heating things up too much. Because it's specifically targeting the water, it evaporates instantly, doesn't have much time or means to transfer its heat to other things. By weakening the drying spell, so that it doesn't instantly evaporate the water and heats it up slowly, you actually get the exact same thing as a microwave. Microwaves, how they work is they use microwaves to excite water molecules. Basically, the wavelength of light used by microwaves specifically is able to vibrate water molecules, and that heats up the water inside your food, and that heats up the food as a whole. So if you do weaken it, instead of drying your food out, you could actually just literally get a microwave. What I'm thinking, I got really sidetracked here. What I'm thinking with the drying spell is maybe if you tried to, since it dries stuff out instantly, if you tried to use it with like silk clothes or like clothes that need to be dried a specific way, it might actually just destroy them. So like if you some clothes can't go in the dryer, some clothes need special washing procedures. I'm thinking maybe just the drying spell would just kill your clothes if they need specific drying conditions. Wow, this is the messiest spell in here. Gosh. This paper, I'm not a big fan, guys. I am not a big fan at all. It really does not handle erasing well at all. I don't know why it's so fragile. I need to keep my erasing to a minimum. I'll do this by hand. I need to just darken the outer circle because of how grimy this thing is. It's really hard to... It just doesn't have as much contrast as it should, so I'm just gonna... I've noticed that depending on what I'm doing, like what I'm drawing, I will change the grip I have on my pencil or pen. Actually, funny story about pens. Recently, I got, well, not recently, a while back from Becky Weber, the same person that made this cup, by the way. Check them out on Twitter, at Eastern Criminal. They make a bunch of cool pottery, such as this this pot. You can buy stuff from their Etsy shop. They sent me this fountain pen. I didn't have ink for it until Christmas, and as soon as I got it, I tried to ink over the spells in my big, like, what is it? The big aggregate spell book, the one where I just compiled all my spells, and I ruined the first page and had to redraw it. I actually redrew that on stream a few days ago. But yeah, fountain pens are really hard to use. I need more training. Imagine making such spells in the middle of the fight. Yeah. So spells, making them in the middle of combat would be extremely difficult. Pre-made spells are probably the way to do it. Like especially if you have contraptions to help activate the spells automatically. Like, for example, I made a machine gun contraption at one point, which uses a feed tape like a strip of paper with a bunch of spells drawn on it, and it feeds them through the machine and it activates them in sequence, so you get a machine gun essentially. I made that, which would be really useful in a combat situation. But if you're up against someone that has access to spells they can activate instantly, such as in the case of the machine gun, simply drawing your spells on the fly would not be enough. You would need them pre-prepared. You need a way to activate them quickly. If you come into a fight in Witch Hat unprepared, you're dead. It's like showing up on the battlefield with your gun unloaded, except instead of loading a modern firearm, you're loading a blunderbuss or a musket, which takes entirely too long to be practical when someone has a machine gun. It's the same kind of thought process. If that makes sense. Playing 60 chess on the fly, but I think witches preps spells by drawing the closing circle with an empty space. Yeah, so that's exactly what I do. If you see empty circle, unclosed circle, unclosed circle, unclosed circle, I always draw my spells incomplete. Wait, yeah, gap right there. Like, every single spell in all my spell books is always drawn incomplete. There are a few times where I've drawn them closed, simply because I wanted but they've all been related to Twitter posts where I needed it to be closed for like an effect or something. But yeah, there's actually a few ways you can activate a spell. I'm gonna show you a few of them. Ways you can activate spells on the fly without like having to draw the outer circle. I made a YouTube video with it a while back. Yeah, just one sec. Okay. Content, videos. Yeah, so here it is. Yep, there we go. So there's a bunch of ways you can activate a spell. Here's just a list of them, a showcase. So yeah, there's a bunch of ways you can prepare spells in advance. I need to plug that back in. But yeah, there we go. Okay, so next up, we have, what do we do? Yeah, I need to label this. I got distracted for a while. I have had this spell on the page for ages, and I have done nothing with it. Okay, back on task. Got to make sure it's lined up right there. God, it's so messy. So this would be humidifier. I'm gonna rename this one Mist Maker. All right. So here we go. By using water and air together with billowing which is weakened by inverted strength and signs. It is possible to produce a mist. The effect is magnified. All right, yeah, nice talking to you too, Connie. See you later. By a Rainmaker rune. With dispersion, spreading the effect in all directions. All right, we're good. Description is almost done. All right, so this would be the 7th spell. Now I just gotta list out all the signs used. But yeah, does anyone have any questions about anything specific regarding the magic system? There's something I could talk about here. I'll explain how dispersion works in the meantime. So if you think about column like a like producing a beam of your magic's effect, dispersion. Well, actually, no, better way to describe it. So let's say you have a garden hose, right? Your garden hose sprays the water out in a nice tight beam and a nice tight column of water. That's what the column sign does. But with dispersion, it's like you put that hose inside of a bucket and let the bucket fill up and overflow. It basically, while column just jets the water out in a stream, dispersion lets it like how do I describe this? Gently ease out in all directions, essentially. So it's yeah, it's a garden hose versus a bucket that's overflowing, that kind of effect. So by doing that here, instead of column, instead of like making a jet of the mist, we make it go out in all directions so it can evenly fill the room. You could use this to make a room more humid, as was the original intention, but you can also use it to, like, I don't know, water plants and such. It might be good for that, like misting your plants so you can get them watered, get them nice and hydrated. That's something you could do with it. So water sigil, that's the primary sigil of this spell. Well, not really. It's primary. There is no primary here because both water and wind are about equal in size and prominence. Spells that contain multiple, can you make a long working spell, like long-term heater? So there's 2 ways to make spells long, 3 ways to make spells longer. The first way is to draw the circle and draw the spell as perfectly as possible. The more perfectly you draw the spell, the longer it will last, right? The next way is to use special dyes. So dyes are basically like additives you put in the ink. Some dyes make the ink invisible, some make it waterproof, some make the spell stronger, some make it weaker, some make it last longer. The ones that make it weaker typically would, based on our current understanding of how magic works, the ones that make it weaker would probably also make it last longer. And it wouldn't be possible to get one without the other unless you're able to somehow put more energy into the spell than would otherwise be possible with just wood cur on its own. But by using ink, you can extend the lifespan of a spell. There's one last way to do it. So remember how we talked about repetition? Repetition is able to reset any change that happens to an item, so long as it's not too drastic, to prevent the item from basically undergoing any change. So let's say you had a spell that you wanted to make last longer. What you could end up doing is you could draw your spell, right? You could draw your spell, and then, well, actually, no. Let's say that this is your spell. Your spell's in the middle, right? To make it last longer, what you can do is you can add a second piece of paper, like a ring, around that spell with a repetition spell on it. What the repetition would do is it would continually restore the inner spell back to its original condition, which would be fully energized. And it would do this until the repetition spell itself ran out of energy. So you can think of it like an external battery for the inner spell, keeping it powered until it runs out. So by doing layers of repetition signs, you can keep them going for longer. And like, let's say we want to make this repetition sign longer. We can add another circle of this repetition spell that lasts longer. We can add another circle around it and another and so on until you run out of space or you run out of ink or whatever, or until you're satisfied. But yeah, those are the 3 ways you can make a spell last longer based on what we currently understand. You could also make a spell last longer, like a heater spell last longer, specifically if you made it so it pumps heat instead of generating it itself. So let's say you had a spell that just like heat pumps, just like heat pumps in real life, which heat your home more effectively than more efficiently than a normal heater by I'm so in depth describing this that I accidentally drew an earth sigil. So heat pumps, what they do, rather than generating the heat themselves, they will collect heat from outside in the same way that basically it's an air conditioner running in reverse. Rather than pumping heat from the inside to the outside, it pumps heat from the outside of your house to the inside of your house, rather than what you would have with an air conditioner where it's doing the opposite, or a freezer where it is also like pumping heat out. Like how freezers get things cold is they literally take the heat inside and pump it outside. By doing that with your spell, making it so it pumps heat from outside of your area to inside of it, you make it so it doesn't have to do as much work, and you make it more efficient. So just like in real life, you could theoretically make it last longer. This is assuming that the energy theory is accurate. We don't know this for sure, by the way. But yeah. How long does it last, a normal spell? So it's really hard to predict how long a spell will last because we just haven't seen enough spells stop working. So spells like repetition, like if you're using it to keep food fresh, that can last for almost a year. Stuff like a beast warding tower, the beast warding spell lasts it straight out lasts for a year, maybe even more. We have stuff like counterclock, which lasts 24 hours. You have reintegration, which lasts maybe a minute. Like integration, the spell that Tartai used to restore items back to their previous shape, that lasts about a minute. Wall breaker lasts for a little while, but not too long. Sometimes it will stop working instantaneously, but that generally only happens if you draw a wall breaker on the surface it's destroying, in which case it will destroy itself, and that's why it stops working. But in others, it can last for a while. Kindle orb, which generates a floating orb of flame, lasts long enough to cook a meal at least. But stuff like bolt spells, which are projectile launchers, they don't last long at all. They instantly dump all their energy, and they stop working immediately. So it's really hard to tell how long a spell will last. There's examples where we know, just based on what we've seen in the manga, how long it will last. But there's just as many as there are examples we've seen, there are just as many, if not more, that we haven't. So it's really hard to predict how long a spell will last. Generally, if your spell is creating something, it will last less long than if it weren't. And the more dramatic the effect of your spell, the less long it will last also. But generally, it's safe to assume your spell, unless you design it specifically to last longer, it won't last more than a day. Oh, Snugstone. Snugstone is a spell that lasts for an extended period. Snugstone, basically, what it does is this is actually the thing I use for my profile picture, by the way. Snugstone generates heat. It weakens the fire sigil in the middle with these radial signs. I'm not sure if they're inverted or not. We've never seen them flip the other way around. Well, we might have once, but I don't remember if we have. But it weakens it, so it can last for days, weeks, maybe longer. But we do know. What we know about how long spells will last is that we don't really know. We know on a case-by-case basis. If we've seen it, we can tell. If we haven't, it's hard to predict. It's not really explored, so it's hard to say. Need to put this thing back on my cork board. There we go. No, that's not right spot. There we go. Is there a ink sigil? So one can manipulate or create ink to do more spells? No, there is not that we know of. One thing you could do is you could use a spell that manipulates water. So actually, I can pull something up real quick. So a while back, I made a spell for a friend. Bunny is Honey, aka Jellyfish, over on Twitter. Yeah, and what the spell is, so Jellyfish, their whole gimmick is that they're jellyfish, right? Is this the right page? Is this the right one? Yes, it is. And so what I designed is I designed this spell so they could go on land, you know, just as a fun present. I don't remember if it was for their birthday or not, but basically right here we have a puppet sign, which is, so there are three kinds of spells that you can control with your mind. Those would be spells using the puppet sign. You can control their movement with your mind. There's spells that have a variant of the puppet sign that we see in the seal chair. With those spells, you can manipulate the shape of an object with your mind. And then we have sight set signs. So sight set signs, what do they look? I know what they look like. I can point out one. I'll just draw it. And then sight set, we have that one last, which sight set allows you to target something. So if your spell is going to shoot at something, you can tell it where to shoot. So this would be sight set. Yeah, that's sight. No, wait, is that sight set? I need to go refresh myself real quick. Hold on. No, that's not sight set. Sight set is this. Sorry, I put the diamond in the wrong spot. And then we have sight set, which allows you to target something. With the jellyfish spell I showed you, you could theoretically take this, pour ink inside of it, and then use your mind to pilot the spell around so you can draw things bigger. But yeah, that's about the full extent of how you can do magic with ink. You can use water, manipulate it, and then do stuff like that you'd normally do to water. So that's one example of something you could do. I don't know. I can't think of any more off the top of my head, but there's probably ways. The mind of one who completes the circle. Okay, that's a good question. I think it's the mind of the person who completes the circle, or the person who had last had contact with the spell. Well, actually, no, it's not the one who completes the circle, because in the case of Costas, how do you spell his name, bro? I don't know how to say it. But with Costas, his seal chair, he never closed the circle on that, but he was able to control it. And the same thing with the flying cloak thing he wore. That allowed him to fly around, but he didn't close the circle. So I'm guessing it's the last person to interact with the object. The stream is losing viewers. Oh no, I don't care. All right, so we got dispersion. I need to write these all. I need to move on to the next spell instead of just yap constantly. So inverted, INV, no. Come on, get that V out of there. Inverted, strengthen. Yeah, I should probably erase this one, draw it somewhere else, because that strengthen takes up too much space. The name. But yeah, there are some spells, like, with magic in general, you can describe it. Well, the word I like to use to describe magic is it's dumb. Basically, with computers are able to take inputs and outputs to generate something else using internal logic. So you can make a computer say, if this happens, do that, or else make this thing happen, right? You can give it logical commands, you can give it instructions. It can do things in sequence. With spells, you close the glyph and they just do. You close the ring and they just do. They don't care, they don't listen to instructions, that you can't make it have logic. They just do what they're programmed to do, like what they're supposed to do based on the signs and sigils involved. And I just heard a noise. And the only exception to this, like the only way to control a spell, is with these mind-controlled signs and sigils, but they still require human input. They can't do stuff on their own. The only way to actually make a spell do something on its own is to include logic gates to give it instructions that way. Yeah, I don't think I have room, so I'm going to put... I have room to write billowing. Billowing. That's so hard to read. Yeah, I need to erase that. Yeah, this paper is really bad, guys. I don't like it. But the spellbook looks so good. I can't not use it. I just need to get better. Just get better. So yeah. Billowing. Still hard to read, but I don't care. We're fine. Someone doesn't know what it says, I can tell them. All right, so next we have Rainmaker. I don't remember what we recently got an official name for the sign, but I don't remember what it was. But can spells be redone? I don't think they can. So with spells, it seems to be that their ink runs out of... This is, again, just theory. It's just conjecture. We don't know if it actually, the energy theory is accurate or not, but it is the thing that best explains the behavior we see. We think that once the ink runs out of juice, basically, it, like, stops working. So to redo a spell, you kind of have to draw it again with new ink, which is basically, like, that's just replacing the spell with a new one. So there's not really redoing spells. You just replace them once they get old. It's like batteries. And then... All right, so this theory is basically... so with spells, we've observed that spells that have stronger effects, like ones that shoot projectiles really fast, ones that are destructive, ones that are used in combat, ones that destroy material, ones that do a lot of things, like they do a lot in a short time, like they have a lot of power. Those spells tend to run out, like to stop working really quickly in comparison to spells that have more relaxed, gradual, drawn-out effects. So it's basically, think about it like if you are using a AA battery to power like a giant flashlight versus a single tiny LED. Like, of course, if you're with a single tiny LED, that'll last way longer. You're using way less energy. But with the big one, you're gonna drain that battery real fast because you're consuming so much energy. Based on that behavior we've seen with powerful spells running out, like ceasing to function really quickly, we kind of came to the conclusion that spells probably get their energy from their ink, and they have a finite amount of it. And once that energy runs out, the spell stops working. So the basic theory is that energy is stored in the ink, and once the energy runs out, the spell stops working. And that's... Oh, I stabbed myself with the compass. And that theory is currently the best thing we have to explain the behaviors of spells that we've seen. Yeah. Oh, I gotta stop doing that. Every time I erase, I permanently make this page a little worse. It's probably the worst page in this book so far. Whatever. I'm not going to fit that. I give up. All right. So, next spell. I don't think stickers... Well, if it was that way, I think it would have been just explained. The theory does check out. It does make sense. Bigger spells are more powerful. They have more ink. They can do more at once. Thicker lines, theoretically, would make the spell last longer based on the energy theory, which... That was the fact that we haven't seen that so far does call it into question a little bit, but it is still the best explanation we have. But based on the theory, not based on what we've seen in the manga, yes, that would happen. Again, it is not canon at all. This is just us trying our best to understand the system and how it works to the best of our ability. So yeah. All right, next spell. We're gonna use the same size. Where's that hole? There it is. Next thing we're going to make... I guess I could do brushbug wheel. This is a little big for brushbug wheel, though. Actually, no, it's just right. So the next spell that I'm going to show you is... I'm going to actually change the name to Object Float. So basically, I designed this spell, this next spell, a while back. Someone made a post on Twitter showing basically a hamster wheel. That was just like, it was a drawing of just a hamster wheel that was just floating in space, like just a ring with like no bars connecting it to anything, floating over a spell. So basically the spell acted as the base for the hamster wheel so it could float, and then Brushbug was in the middle running. Yeah, Sensei probably doesn't know this. It's probably not, like, she probably didn't think it through that much. I'm pretty sure she thought about spells consume a certain amount of energy. They run out after a certain amount of time based on how powerful they are. I'm pretty sure she thought about that. But the thicker lines idea, I'm not sure if she's thought of that so far. Again, we are doing the best we can with what limited information we have. So our thoughts and theories on the system are constantly changing. It's just, I'm just telling you guys the ones we know best currently. It's like physics. Like, we don't know how gravity, like, we don't know how to unify gravity with quantum mechanics, like the theory of gravity with quantum mechanics. We don't know how to do that yet. So the best we can do is theorize for now. Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. That's probably the most likely explanation. There is a chance that thicker lines would make the spell less accurate, though, because, you know, if your signs are less neatly defined, if they spread out over a larger space, it might make it harder. So, yeah, back to the spell I'm talking about. So the basic thing, what I saw, this person made a hamster wheel for Brushbug that they made art of a hamster wheel for Brushbug that basically floated above a spell. And my thought was I want to make a spell to actually make that work. So this spell is a little interesting, and then it makes use of the link sign. Now, I'm not sure exactly how the link sign works. But what I do know is that in the case of the crystal shard rings that Rishi made, that, how do I describe this? All right, so let's say you have a I don't know. You have, what object should I choose? You have a piece of wood. You have a block of wood, right? This is one single block of wood. It's one item, one object. Let's say you cut it in half, right? So it's cut in half now. The one object is changed into two, but they used to be part of the same object. This spell is based off of the link sign. So the link sign looks like this. You just gotta make sure I draw it accurately. This is the link sign. And what it does is it connects, if you draw it, let's say I drew it on this square, what it would do is it would form a magical connection with the other one, specifically because they used to be part of the same object. So let's say I have another piece of wood that did not come from this original cube. It wouldn't link with that. These two would not link. But these two that did come from the same cube, they would. So basically what it does is it links an object to anything that used to be part of the same object as it. And the idea with this spell is you can make the base of your Brushbug hamster wheel and the actual ring for the Brushbug hamster wheel separately. Like, well, not separately. You'd make them out of the same chunk of wood. And that way, when you draw the link sign on them, they would form that magical connection between the two, because they did come from the same object. So the link sign links them together. And the reason I do this is because this uses an earth sigil, right? It uses an earth sigil to keep the floating Brushbug wheel and the the floating hamster wheel for Brushbug and the base linked together. And the problem with earth is that earth affects a lot of things. Earth affects stone, earth affects wood. I'm not sure if it affects metal, but it probably does. It affects glass, probably. It affects dirt. It affects a lot of things. A lot of objects in your house could be affected by the spell, and you don't want it to just grab, like, any random object you put nearby and float it over top. You want it specifically to make the Brushbug wheel float over top. And to do that, you add the link sign. So it specifically links to the Brushbug wheel, but only if you make it and the base of the spell out of the same material. Linking them means concretely, I'm not exactly sure. We've only seen it once. In the case of the crystal fragment bangles, what Richie did is she drew a light ribbon spell in the middle of it, so that whenever the spell is activated, it would form a light ribbon between it and the other thing. So basically what I think it does is it makes the magic stretch between the object you draw it on and the other things that used to be part of the main object, right? So in this case, it would make the magic go between the base and the wheel. So that's basically what it probably means, because that's what it meant in the light example, in the crystal ring example, where all the crystal rings were made out of the same main crystal and they all had the spell drawn on them. Basically, the purpose of that spell was so that if one of the girls got lost, she could activate it on the ring, and then the string of light would go between their ring and all the other ones, so the other girls could find them. And so in this case, what I'm thinking is this would make the magic stretch between the base and the brushbug wheel. So yeah. What else do I need to draw in here? I need to do the levitation sign. So the levitation sign is here to make the brushbug wheel float over top. The pull signs, what they're here for, they're here to, so if the brushbug wheel strays too far to the side, and like, so like if the brushbug wheel strays too far to the side and kind of like drifts away from the base, the pull signs will pull it back in so that the levitation signs can still keep it levitated. This basically, the pull signs pull it in until levitation is able to take effect, and then it keeps it floating there. So levitation keeps the wheel floating, pull pulls it back if it migrates too far. And then lastly, we have convergence. Convergence focuses the effect at the center of the spell. I just did this for good measure. I wasn't sure how focused it would be. Like, what if it goes off to the side? What if it makes the effect stray too far over? I wanted to minimize that, so I put convergence on. And lastly, we have the link sign. So this one's, I don't know how difficult it is to draw because I've only done it a few times, but yeah, that seems pretty all right. Oh, it's a little badly proportioned, but you know what? That's fine. So yeah, this is a link sign. Like I said, the link sign basically links the object to anything else that came from the same origin object. So that would prevent the spell from grabbing onto objects nearby that aren't the brushbug wheel. So yeah. So now I'm going to title this page, Brushbug Wheel. Let's see how far up I went. So for this one, vacuum cleaner, the golden standard, right there. Brushbug. Brushbug is such a better name than Brush Buddy. I'm not sure why the official translation uses Brush Buddy. It's so much worse. It's to the point that the entire fandom still uses Brushbug, even though it's not called that in the manga itself. Brushbug Wheel. We're good. All right. So, I've been on this spell long enough and described it enough to you guys that I think you don't want to hear that explanation again. So I'm just going to skip out on writing down the explanation for how the spell works for now. I'm just going to write down the signs, and then we're going to move on to the next one, because I'm pretty sure you guys are somewhat bored of this spell. So we got pull. Actually, no, I need to do Earth Sigil first. So Earth. I did that a little big. A little messy too, but it doesn't matter. It's not part of the spell. It doesn't have to be neat. Or at least too neat. So next, link. Link. We have convergence. Maybe I'll do Reddit here. For long ones, I will start writing them beside it so I can manage to fit more stuff underneath. Don't waste space. Convergence. Next up we have levitation, and then we can move on after I write down pull. Levitation, just lev, and then pull. Hello, so glad to see your process live. I'm drawing spells using the Witch Hat magic system for my D&D Wizard spellbook, and your account has been a huge inspo. Thanks for sharing the knowledge. No problem. I've been doing this for 4 years. Sharing the stuff is kind of what I do. That's why I wrote all the spells content on the wiki. I just wanted to share stuff, like share knowledge of the magic system with others. So mainly for selfish reasons. I mainly just want to see other people make spells, so I can nerd out about them. Yeah, that's half my motivation. The other half is to genuinely help you guys, but the other one is just so I get more spells to look at. So yeah, I'll write the explanation for this one later. I'm sure it's complicated. It might take a while. I might have to think about it. So that might not be great stream content. So next we're gonna do a spell that I'm not. No, we're gonna skip that one for now. We'll do that later. We will do some. Well, let's just think simple. Let's do 2 spells on 1 page. So inverted convergence. Is this spell even worth drawing? I'm not sure if this one is valid, so I'm just gonna put a little mark next to it in the spell book. There's some spells that are like, I'm not sure how much they deserve an entry in the spell book because of how simple they are. So I'm gonna mark those ones real quick. So we have this done. We have humidifier, windbreak. I guess I could do windbreak. All right. So the idea for windbreak, I'm not sure if this one would work. I'll hold out on it. All right, next page. All right, gotta flip the iPad down. Cooler. Yeah, this one's lame. Does it deserve an entry? I'll think about it. The rotation spells. Okay, I can do the rotation spells. So this is a group of spells. Basically, their entire purpose is to make things spin. So how high do I want this? I want it to be the highest point in the spell. To be flush with the highest point in the vacuum cleaner, because that's the standard. All right, so there. So gotta look at this. So about there. Okay. So middle of the page would be there. So this is the first one. So like I said, the rotation spells, their whole purpose is to make things spin. There's 3 ways I can think of doing this. So I'll draw all 3. This will be a combo page. And there's actually one version that I've never drawn before, but I have not left myself enough space. Is there enough space on this side? There is. So what I can do is... All right. Oh, it's deformed. Sorry for blocking the view, guys. This one's a little special. I've not tried to draw multiple on 1 page before. I'll try to erase this one without leaving too much of a mark. Might be hard. I'm gonna break out the pink eraser for this. Yeah, that's erasing better than I thought it would. Okay. Yeah, I should probably only exclusively use the pink eraser with this page, because this paper is really bad for erasing stuff. All right. So over here, we'll have this guy. Can I fit a 3rd one in the middle? Let's see. Yes, I can. Wonderful. All right, I messed that up. I'm gonna have to go back around. And then... All right, so I have 3 designs for rotation spell, all based on a different principle. So the first 2 both use levitation. One uses wind, and the other uses a window sign. So the wind one is based on precedent, right? So we see Coco use a wind sigil combined with levitation to fly in chapter 3, using her little glider thing. So the thought process, since we know slanting sign will make something spin, or will result in a spinning effect, if we have levitation signs and we slant them like this, it will rotate it, just as she can fly using this spell, but with the levitation signs pointing all in one direction. By tilting them, you can make something spin. So next up, we have another idea, which uses the window sign. So how window works is window makes it so your spell only affects the thing it's drawn on. So in this case, if we have window, so it only affects the object it's drawn on. And then you involve some levitation signs. You make it so the object you draw it on will rotate. So basically the same exact idea as same exact spell as the wind spell, but this time you use window instead. Lastly, I actually don't know how to draw this sign, so I'm gonna have to look it up real quick. There is another sign we know of that already automatically makes a rotating effect. So I'm gonna look it up. Witch Hat Atelier wiki. So it's a new sigil that was released Well, it was unveiled in the Volume 12 bonus chapter, as all good things are. Well, not bonus chapter, like spell bonus page or whatever. Where is it? You're learning so much already? Nice. So, I'm getting better at like describing the magic system as I go along. Like streaming and working on the script for the spell video and just talking to people online has really developed my skills. So I'm hoping that the magic system video is good. So nope, oh, wrong page. Click the wrong link on the wiki, unfortunate. Sigils explained. Fire, blah, 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 blah. Whirling winds! Okay, so, what? Oh, come on. Telepedia, display the file. I beg you, that's all I need. Alright, we'll do it this way. So this is Whirling Winds. Oh, no, my laptop's still plugged in. This is Whirling Winds. Whirling Winds rotate stuff really fast. Well, not rotate stuff, really fast. It just spins things. We've seen it on the Pegasus carriage, and we've also seen it in the spell that they used to rotate the they tried to use to rotate the platforms that in chapter 83, 82, 81. In the chapter that they were trying to kill the leech, where the platforms weren't in a circle, they were trying to use this to spin the stuff, so centrifugal force would make it kind of like put them in position. It basically was meant to move the wind, and it does it in a swirling pattern. So by drawing whirling winds on the spell, you can theoretically get your thing to spin. The problem is with whirling winds is it seems to affect other things. It's a sigil. I'm not sure why it's a sigil. I'm not sure why it doesn't look like the other wind spells that much, why it's got 3 parts instead of the normal 2. It's a little strange. It confuses me, but you know, that just means I don't know enough yet, and I need to learn more. I need to study it. That is so unbalanced. We need to get better. Yeah, so whirling winds here, maybe with levitation like the others. This might just spin it faster. I'm not sure. I don't fully know how whirling winds works. By the way, so far I've been drawing my spells with 2-way symmetry or 4-way symmetry. That's not a requirement. You can do 3-way, you can do 5-way, you can do 4-way. I mean, yeah, 4-way. Any kind of symmetry you want, you can do. Typically, the more you have, like the higher your order symmetry, like the higher the number of signs, the more stable it will be. So like, let's say you're really bad at drawing signs. Something that Uni did, because he's bad at drawing like steady lines, is he just fills his spells with as many signs as he can fit. And by doing that, he basically helps to average out the messy bits. It's like, how do I describe this? So like, let's say you're shooting at a fence, right? Or shooting at a can on top of a fence. It might be hard to hit it off with one shot, but if you do a bunch, you're much more likely to actually knock the thing off. You're much more likely to actually hit. It's kind of similar with these. The more you put on, the more likely your spell is to be stable, basically, because you're just averaging it out. What's a better example? I can't think of any, but yeah. So the idea for all of these is that they impart rotation in one way or another. So I'm going to write that in the description. I have a lot of spells that are pretty simple. So even though I do have like, how many am I at? I'm at, oh, did I skip a page? I skipped a page. That's fine. Even though I'm at only like 7 page entries completed and 2 almost completed, I'm actually, most of the spells that are left are more simple than the ones I've done so far. So it won't take quite as long as it might seem. So comparative vacuum cleaner, that's where it is, blah, 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 and referenced. Okay, rotation. I should probably, just in case, add window signs to this, because I'm not sure if it would move the air over top the spell, or it would, yeah, I'm not sure if it would move the air over top the spell, or simply move the item the spell is drawn on itself. So just to ensure, but you can't move air. It's fine. It's fine. It's a theory. They don't have to be completely perfect, just to demonstrate the idea. All right, so basically the thought process here, in case that the whirling wind spell doesn't affect the object it's drawn on, I can use this to make it so it does. So yeah, I gotta write down the signs now. I'll do them underneath. I like this a lot, actually, putting them under. Levitation, abbreviated to the lev. I have enough room, I can write it fully. Then we have window and levitation. I can move that over. But yeah, all these spells, the main reason I'd see using these spells is if you're making a contraption of some kind. If you want to move gears with your spell and don't want to like have to design a full-blown engine based on pistons, which by the way, I have diagrams or designs for pistons. If you don't want to like literally build a steam engine or like some sort of engine to operate your spell to make it or contraption to make it rotate, window, I spelled that right. You can use these spells instead to like turn gears, make things rotate, so on and so forth. What's an application for this? You like in a microwave, the turntable, or let's say I want my vacuum cleaner to be better at cleaning rugs. Why did I draw angled? I'm drawing it up and down. If I want my vacuum cleaner to be better at cleaning rugs, I could like, you know how like Dyson vacuum cleaners, like high-end vacuum cleaners will have that like spinning thing, like the spinning bristles to clean out the carpet better? Yeah, I could add something like that. I could, like the machine gun design, I could automate that using the rotation stuff. There's a lot of applications you can use for this, but it's mostly for designing contraptions and such. People tend not to design contraptions as much as they design spells, which I think is a shame, because contraptions are more fun in my opinion, but they are a lot harder to draw and a lot harder to think of how to do them. Because it's basically engineering, so it makes sense that it's harder. Whirling winds. And then window. I just want to be done with this page. And lev. All right. So this would be, so if we're putting 8 here, this would be 9. So this would be 10, 11, 12. Sorry, I left for a moment. Do these spells are exactly the same? Okay, so theoretically, all these spells will do the same thing. They do it through different ways. Oh yeah, so this is an important thing about spell design. There's more than one way to do a specific effect. Like, there's not one right way. There are several ways you can get the same thing to happen through different means. It's like, there's more than one way to boil water. You can use a gas stove, you can use a fire stove, you can use induction heating, you can use lights to generate heat. There's a lot of ways that you can do it so you can boil your water. And this is the same idea. There's a lot of spells you can make that will have the exact same effect, but they'll have the same effect, but they'll do it through different ways. My throat is starting to hurt from talking so much. How long have I been streaming? I've been streaming for, geez, that is, so 2 hours is 120. So I've been streaming a minute short of 3 hours. I need to build up my endurance if I want to do this every day. All right, so all three of these spells cause the object they are drawn on to rotate. The first one uses air and levitation. No, it uses wind mixed with lev. It uses wind and levitation to rotate itself, to propel itself, to propel its rotation. The second one uses window to limit the spell's effect. The rotation effect of the levitation signs. To rotate the object. The last spell uses Whirling Winds which creates rotating air. Plus levitation to spin, to generate the spin. With window limiting said rotation. To the object it is drawn on. To the object on which the spell is drawn. I literally don't have any more room on this page. That was literally perfect. I need to rewrite drawn because my handwriting is that terrible, but yeah. All right, done with these boring spells. Let's do something fun now. Okay. So, back to the page I skipped because I'm stupid. We'll write the entry for this later. We can do... What can we do? So I got these ones down. I got... That one's... I'm not even sure if it's worth drawing. Heat pump. Okay. So, earlier I mentioned that it might be good to, instead of simply heating an area with a spell that generates heat, to collect that heat from elsewhere instead. So like I described with the energy theory of magic, the less you have to do, like the less you have to make with your spell, the better it will be, like the better, because then it will have less to do, less energy expended, the spell lasts longer, right? So the idea here is if I want to heat a room as effectively as possible, while using as little energy as possible for the spell, it's better to collect that energy from somewhere else than to simply generate it on the spot. Just like how the vapor bubble collects water from the air instead of producing it so that it can last longer. This spell collects heat from the surroundings so it can last longer. That's basically the core idea of it. Oh, my spells are gradually migrating over to the right. I should take that into account. Okay, to the left. Yeah, to the left. So how this works is we use the Snug Stone as the base. So the Snug Stone, as we know, is... Well, the Snug Stone is my profile picture, essentially. My profile picture is a Snug Stone spell. Snug Stone, what it does is it produces heat. Not fire, just plain old heat. It heats the object it is drawn on, and nothing else. You can get warm by touching this object, but it will not directly heat you up. It will only do that by transferring the heat from the object you draw the Snug Stone spell on to objects nearby. So we're going to use Snug Stone as the base because we want this to be a spell that focuses on heat, right? Not some other thing. We don't want it to do fire. We don't want it... Like, if we just make the spell based off of fire, that's counterproductive to pumping heat. That will just probably make fire instead or collect fire. So we want to target heat specifically, so we use the basis of the Snug Stone spell. Next up, in order to, so this is basically a Snugstone spell without the column signs. We don't need these here. Next, what we want is we want collection signs. Collection signs will, oh, actually, no, I forgot. We have updated, the magic system has grown. Guys, we've gained new signs since the spell was made. So originally what it had is it had collection, and it had pull signs as well. So it could pull heat in. But now we have the gather sign. So what the gather sign does is it gathers heat from the surroundings to... Actually, I could make this smaller. It gathers heat from the surroundings. Well, not gathers heat. It gathers things from the surroundings. So it's instead of collection, which is passive, gather is more active. So it's actively pulling things in, actively collecting. So you can actually get stuff more proactively. So rather than just passively collecting stuff, you're doing it actively. So we have gather here. That gather's kind of bad. I drew this poorly. We can fix it. And now another gather sign. Actually, no, I ignored the symmetry. God damn it. Alright, another gather sign here. That's also badly drawn. And then we're going to need one more between the other two radial signs. By the way, radial basically weakens the effect of a spell. At least that's what we think it does. We've only ever seen it in Snugstones. And all that's in a Snugstone is a inverted column sign, radial, and a fire sigil. So basically the only conclusion we were able to draw is that Snugstone, that radial weakens a spell. Or focuses on something else. So like heat being a product of fire, it might be it focuses on the product of whatever you're making. So like instead of, I don't know, air, it'd be movement of air or something. I don't know. But in this case, radial makes it so fire becomes heat instead. And from here, we're going to... So right now, what this spell will do is it'll collect heat. But we want it to output that heat back into the air, surrounding air. So what we're going to do... Like back into the surroundings. So what we're going to... Oh, my iPad's sliding. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a wind sigil here. Or 3 wind sigils, I guess. I should probably make them smaller. I drew that one at the wrong angle, so that's bad. But the idea here, we collect heat, and then we pump that heat into the... So this collects heat from the object it's drawn on, I suppose. And then what it does is it moves that heat into the air. So we're going to add air sigils here so it can move the heat that it collects elsewhere. And then we're going to add column signs to jet this heat out. So is this centered on the screen? There we go. So 1 air sigil, 2 air sigils, 3 air sigils. Is it possible to collect fire and turn it into heat only? That's probably a thing you can do. But I would have to think about how... Like, that sounds achievable. But I'd have to think about how to do it. I have never thought about that before. So I don't really know if there's a way. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but there probably is one that I just haven't come across yet. Or, like, haven't thought of yet. So, alright, and we're going to have column. Column is fine. Column is fine. We'll have column to push that heat out. To push that air outwards. Oh, this would probably be better as a nested spell. Can I fit that? Can I fit that? Wait. Because, yeah. This works. This works. Okay. So, the first time we saw a collection was in the Vapor Bubble, right? And in the Vapor Bubble spell where we see collection for the first... where we see gathering for the first time, it's actually gathering is literally touching an inner ring of the spell. So what I can do here is I can... Oh, I need to move that. I need to reshape this. I will need to make a ring encapsulating the Snugstone and the radial sign so that I make the central aspect of the spell heat and then have an outer ring that's pumping the air. So this brings us to another concept, which is nested spells. Nested spells are spells that are layered inside of each other. And basically how they work, they sometimes confuse people when they first see them, but they're pretty simple. Basically, you know how the signs in a spell contribute to the overall effect of the spell? So, like, each sign combines its effect to make one greater spell that has the combined effects of all of them. nested spells, instead of combining the effects of signs, they combine the effects of spells. So if I have a spell in the center that, in this case, a spell that collects heat, and on the outside, a spell that blows air, the compound spell that they form will be a spell that collects heat and blows that heat away with the air. So the interesting thing about nested spells is that whenever you have a nested spell, even if the inner, like if you close the glyph on the inner spell, but not the outer spell, the inner spell won't activate. I'm not sure why it doesn't activate, but for some reason, whenever you have nested spells, both of the nested spells have to be completed in order for the effect to manifest, for like the spell to activate. Don't ask why, I don't know, but it does make my life easier because if it weren't for this, it would be a lot harder to draw complicated spells, because if you had complicated spells that were nested, you'd have to activate both of them, like both spells at the same time. That might be extremely hard because, you know, you only have 2 hands, so it'd be hard to close all those gaps at the same time. So, yeah, that's the spell. So I'm going to, oh god, I drew this so small in comparison to the others. I might want to fit another thing on this page. Alright, so if we have this one here, heat pump. Yeah, we'll have heat blower and heat pump. So, heat pump. Oh, I have to cross-reference with this. So, technically this is 2 spells. I want to separate out, like draw separately, the heat pump alone without the wind blower spell, because that would be useful for me. So heat blower. No, heat pump. Heat pump heater. And then below that, we will have simply, well, next to it, I guess. I don't like the placement I had for the spell. Hi, Karma. Welcome to the stream. We're currently working on the spell book, so that's fun. How do I fit this? Yeah, I kind of made a mistake making the spell so small, but as has been demonstrated several times so far, erasing on this paper only causes problems, so we're going to avoid that. So we're going to have collection, gather. Now we'll start with fire. So this will be fire, air, I need to hold this down. The paper's moving too much. Radial. Gather. And after, oh, nope, that angle's wrong. So the gather sign, and then last but not least, column. So, yeah, that's good. Column. So, well, those are so much bigger than the other ones, it's fine. So, the basic idea of this spell, you collect heat with the inner spell. It collects heat from the objects it's drawn on and the surroundings. I'll actually add some inverted column signs just for good measure, like how the Snugstone is. So the spell collects heat from the object it's drawn on. I need to make that smaller. I need to work on my scaling. It's so bad. Inverted column. All right. So the spell operates. This spell works. by collecting, by gathering, because the name is gather. I've been following the magic circles you make on Twitter for a while now, and I'm creating... Oh, wait, hold on. I've been following the magic circles you make on Twitter for a while, and now I'm creating too. Seeing you drawing them live is really cool. Thanks. Yeah, I've been doing this for 4 years. It's probably my biggest hobby, other than hiking. This is my biggest hobby. So yeah, I'm glad that people appreciate it so much. By gathering heat from the object it's drawn on, and carrying it away via air to heat the surroundings. The central spell uses the Snugstone spell. Okay, I'm actually gonna... The central spell uses fire, weakened by radial, to target heat with inverted column so it targets the object it's drawn on. Next up, I have to target the object it's drawn on. Gather makes it collect heat rather than heats what it is drawn on. And the wind sigils with column blow air, which whisks that heat away. All right, and over here, I'm gonna draw the heat pump spell on its own. So just as a little thing on the side, I'm gonna label it. All right. So this would be the central spell of this, if you drew it on its own. So you can see here that the gather signs are embedded in the circle. I know that you can do this and it will still work based on what we saw in the the vapor bubble. So I'm using it here just to save space, but for this, for the showing the heat pump itself, I will actually just draw it normally, where it's not embedded in the circle. So now we have gather. I'll make an arrow pointing towards this that says alternate center. So the idea here is that, so yes, so if the fire sigils allow it to generate fire, it shouldn't need to collect signs, right? Yes, that is correct. But by making it so it collects heat from the surroundings instead of generates heat on its own, that should theoretically make the spell more efficient. So rather than generating heat, like generating flame itself to make the heat, is collecting the heat from the surroundings by using the fire mixed with radial, so it can actually just collect heat rather than make it itself. And by doing that, you can make it so the spell consumes less energy, and in theory, that should make it last longer. So you can use this thing for a longer period of time before it stops working. Alternate center. Center design. There we go. Now I've effectively used the space. All right. So this is spell number 9. I have not filled out the text entry for this page. You know what? I might as well. Okay. No, it's so complicated. That spell is really hard to describe how it works, so I'm just going to hold off on that. So this means I need so 10, 11, 12. So that means I have what? Let's just ignore this one and say I have 11 done. So 11 spells of 74. 11 divided by 74. 14%, 14.8% done, guys. We're 15% of the way there. Wonderful. And I've skipped over a bunch of basic spells too. So yeah, we're doing good. I say this is successful. All right, next up, what should I make? Laser? I can make laser. So in one of the chapters of Witch Hat, I don't remember which one, Agate draws a spell, right? Oh, I'm using so many sticky notes, guys. I'm gonna burn through my supply. So Agate makes a spell. It looks like this. We have a... Oh, you can't see this because it's how small I'm drawing it. Okay. So this is the spell Agate draws, but she draws it way bigger. Just ignore how small I made it. I don't know why I made it this small. But it's basically a light spell with column pointing inwards. This makes a beam of light, right? And what it looked like is it basically looked like you have the spell, and then you have the light shining here like a giant flashlight, like with a beam of constant width, just like blinding light in this beam shape emanating from the glyph. I'm just gonna darken the surroundings so it's more apparent. So basically just like a shining beam of light from the spell, right? I'm not satisfied with that. I don't just want a shining beam of light. I want a laser. I want to focus it down, convert it to a point, make it so my spell is emitting from one spot. I want a laser pointer, not a super wide flashlight that never gets wider. What would I call this? I want a skinny laser, not a super wide laser. That's what I want. So how am I going to do that? How do I go about making a skinny laser? Well, we're gonna do it with region signs and with convergence. So I've talked about region before during the stream. So let's see, vacuum cleaner, the center is there. Where's the center of the page? You know what? We'll define it separately. So I'm gonna write laser first, just to give myself a reference. All right, so that's that spot. Laser. Laser. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna find the middle of the page. Where would that be? Middle, somewhere over there. There, roughly. All right, go higher. We want this wider. Just make a thin line. All right, how big do we want? We want the same size as before. So that should be good. So how we're going to do this is in the center, we're going to define the point where it should emit from with region signs. So I described this earlier, but region signs, what they do, they essentially tell the spell like where to manifest the effect in relation to the glyph. So let's say so to focus it in the middle, what we do is we'd bound the middle portion of the spell to the center using region signs. So we'd put one region sign pointing there, one there, one there, and one there. By doing this, we basically tell the spell only manifest your effect from the spot in a spot between these points, which in this case would be concentrated in the center of the spell. To get that, to further converge the light beam, what we're gonna do is we're gonna add convergence signs. So lasers have light that is converged into a single beam. So we want to converge our light into a single beam using convergence signs. Really big convergence signs would take up a bunch of space. So instead of drawing like a really large convergence sign, so to get that extra power, I'm just gonna draw two, like back to back to each other. Convergence is one of the harder signs to draw, despite how simple it is, because it's supposed to be an equilateral triangle. It's really easy to mess that up. I just did, by the way, I just messed it up. But yeah, so we're gonna have convergence, converging the light of the laser down to that central point defined by the region signs. And now we're going to have, yeah, that's more or less fine. It's not perfect, but you know. Now we're gonna have column signs. So we're gonna want it to be, so column basically would produce a beam just as wide as the glyph. We still want to produce a beam, we just want it to be narrower. So there's no reason to get rid of column when we already have this to focus it down. So column will just make the spell emit upwards in a beam that is, by virtue of these signs, converged here and defined. Lastly, we're gonna need the sigil, because we want to make a laser, we're gonna want light. So we're gonna actually have to draw 4 to keep this thing balanced. Theoretically, I could just do 2 on the opposite sides, but I don't want to. That looks less good. Looks messier that way. So I'm gonna just draw 4 light sigils. 1 light sigil, 2 light sigil, 3 light sigil. And the last one. Light sigils aren't hard to draw, but you can mess them up pretty easily. If you go too fast and don't pay attention, you can mess them up easily. You have to make sure you go all the way to the edge. Sometimes you miss, and that's bad. All right. What about convergence? Okay, I already did that. Yeah, all right. And we could do more than one beam in the same spell by copying the center part. Theoretically, yeah, I've never thought about that, but if you had several of these, you could define like multiple points. Like if I wanted to do 2, 1 there, 1 there. If I wanted to do 6, I could make a hexagon. Like there's no reason why you couldn't. If you did want, like if you wanted to make multiple points that the laser emits from, yeah. I think they might be less strong. I'm not sure. But yeah, you could definitely do that. So so in the spell we have column signs. So first we want the light sigil. Light, column, region, convergence. Convergence is hard to write. I'm just gonna erase the text for region. Erase this, turn this region into a convergence by doing that. I see another message in chat out of the corner of my eye, but I am focused, so I will read it in a second. All right, convergence. And then region. All right, yeah, someone just said cool. All right, that's cool. So, laser. Okay, I never define the name of the spell in the description. So I should just say this spell. To keep consistent with the theme, this spell Creates a beam of light. A light beam via light sigils and column signs. In order to narrow this beam, into a laser, region signs focused on a single point that's impossible to read. Focused around a single point. Confine the spell's effect to a confine the effect to that center area, to the spell's center. Convergence is used to further focus the beam. I can't fit the word convergence there. Focus the beam. All right, there you go. Laser is done. So that would be spell number 13. Whew. I've been streaming for a while, guys. This has been 12 minutes. All right, so 3 hours, 32 minutes. That's quite a while. 10 of those minutes were set up, but you know, still a lot. Okay, so next, what do I want to draw? So we have laser, rotation. We don't have cooler because cooler is too basic. It's not worth it. We have heat pump. We have laser. Brush bed. Brush bed is extremely complicated. Can I even fit that on a page? Might have to do. Brush bed might have to be a 2-page entry. Let's see. Could I do it in the same scale as vacuum cleaner? I could. Maybe do it in the same scale. Oh, that'll be a tough fit. Can I do it? We have to. We have to at some point. We have to at some point. We're going to make it slightly larger, though. So, we're going to write brush bed first. Based on, as always, the vacuum cleaner page. Its spacing. So, right there. Brush bed. So brush bed is a bed for brush bug made of magic. I will demonstrate. Oh, it's pinned to my board. So this is the brush bed. It functions by having multiple rings of spells, each with different effects. So the lower ring simply creates a cloud, like a cloud not really made of, a cloud made of light, right? So light is not very dense. It doesn't have much consistency. So basically the brush bed will just sink through it. The brush bug will sink through it, right? I use repetition signs to kind of solidify it a little bit. Now, granted, I'm not sure if light will form a physical object, but, you know, it's just fun. Like, oh, a cloud made of light that you can sit on. That's just a fun idea, you know what I mean? So I use light, so I'm going to use light sigils there. The outer spell isn't very strong, which is where the inner one comes in. The inner one is supposed to have a little bit more actually, oh, wait, no, I got it backwards. So the outer one has repetition to give it some solidity, to make it like a little rigid, so that the brush bug doesn't fall through. But the inner spell does not have repetition. And it also has levitation. So what that does is it makes it so the second cloud manifests over top the first one and is a lot more squishy. So when the brush bug lays on it, they sink through the first cloud. It's like the soft cushy cushion, and then underneath you have the slightly denser, slightly firmer cushion underneath that stops them from falling all the way through. So basically you give it, like, it can sink in and be cozy, but also be supported. And in the center, you have a Snugstone spell to keep the brush bug warm. This was actually made in a competition I had with a friend of mine to make the comfiest bed for brush bug. And this was my result. Also down here, to give it like a massage function, I put a rotation spell with a unbalanced weight there, so when it spins, it would vibrate up and down to give brush bug a massage. But you know, that's not part of the spell. That's just something separate. So we're going to draw this. It'll be extremely complicated. It is the most complicated spell I have attempted so far. Not the most complicated one I've ever made, though it might be second place. So center of the page. Boom, boom, over a little bit. All right, see you later, dude. It was nice having you on stream and chat. I'll probably be streaming again tomorrow. So yeah. Actually, no, not tomorrow. Tomorrow might be busy. The day after, Friday. So here's the outer ring. So the outer ring of the spell, of the brush bed. This is a nested spell, so it's going to have several rings. We're going to want to define the Snugstone ring. I want the Snugstone ring to be as small as I can get it, so I have as much room for the other stuff as I can. I'm just going to demo how big this would be. That might not be enough. Yeah, maybe slightly larger. Yeah, hope to see you in the next stream, dude. Alright, so inner circle. Again, nested spells. The spell for nested spells, which are spells layered inside of each other, again, they will not activate until all the rings are closed. So even though I could close the inner ring and the spell still wouldn't activate, I'm just going to leave it open anyways, just, you know, just for fun. So, which needs to be more complicated? I think I want slightly more room on the outer one than the... Actually, I'll keep them as even as I can. How equal is that? Fairly equal. Basically perfect. Okay. Yeah, this spell is going to be a little hard to do, guys. Oh, I accidentally closed the ring. So, fun fact about closing a ring. If you close a ring without any signs or sigils drawn inside, it will explode. So it'll create an explosion and a shockwave. So make sure you always draw your spell before you close your ring, or else you will be in for a bad time, and you might lose fingers. Tedia almost... Well, Tedia did actually activate the ring first, but she managed... She was okay. It wasn't a very big spell, and I think Kifri saved her. I don't know if he needed to save her, like if she would have been fine, but just be careful not to close... In universe, be careful not to close the outer ring until the inner... To close a ring until you have the spell drawn. The, empty rings being closed, generating explosions, feeds back into the energy idea, because, basically the theory with that is that, if you draw a spell with no signs or sigils, you aren't telling it what to do with its energy. You aren't giving it any, like... form, so it just releases in the purest form possible, which would be an explosion or a shockwave. And so that's like, it adds a little bit more weight to the energy theory of how spells work. So we're gonna have a Snugstone in the center. Should I do a 3-way or a 4-way? 4-way. So the rest of the spell will be 4-way symmetrical, so might as well make the Snugstone the same. I could do 3-way symmetry, but you know, want to keep it visually defined. Boy, am I hungry. I need to eat after this. Oh, I am making an error. These are backwards. Snugstone has inverted column, not normal column. What are you doing, Chroma? So, inverted column makes it so that the brush bed, or the Snugstone spell, will heat the object it's drawn on by beaming it into the object rather than away from it. Or at least that's a theory. We don't know for sure what inverted column does, but based on what it does in Snugstone, that's the primary idea that I'm going with. But either way, if I copy the Snugzone spell, it should be fine. Because, you know, Snugzone is canon. We've seen it in recent chapters, so we know it's not retconned. Some Sensei sometimes changes the designs of spells to make them make more sense, or to make them more logically consistent with other spells. She has not done that with Snugzone, so I assume that it was designed well. And then we have the radial signs. These make it so instead of producing fire, the spell produces heat instead. I think they do this by weakening it, but not sure because I haven't seen it used with any spell other than Snugstone. We'll have to wait and see if we see radial pop up somewhere else. So we have radial done. Now it's time for my least favorite sign in the world, billowing. I freaking... Second least favorite. The only one I like to draw less, is probably Rainmaker. Rainmaker is absolute hell to draw. Alright, so this is the top cloud that Brushbug will lie on. Actually, you know what I'll do? I'll just put the brush bed drawing here so you guys can see it and get an idea of what we're going for. So the lower cloud will be firmer, the upper cloud will be softer. And right now we are drawing the upper cloud. So by having the upper cloud be softer, Brushbug sinks into it and is nice and cozy. But the lower cloud is thick enough and firm enough that it can still support his weight, so he doesn't sink all the way in. And simply lie on the wood beneath the brush bed, or on the spell itself. Alright, so we have 2 billowing signs. Do I want 2 or 3? I want 2. I mean 2 or 4, I want 2. Yeah. That's a really bad billowing sign, but I don't care. I hate drawing them. They're really hard. I deserve a break from perfection. Alright, then we have a light sigil. A light sigil. So the idea is light is very tenuous. Like, I don't know if light would actually make a solid cloud, but it's fun, you know what I mean? Like a glowing, a cloud of light. So much fun. That's the idea. And then we have region signs. These confine the area that the upper cloud will form in to just the area of the glyph. We don't want the soft cloud. So since the spell is nested, its effects will combine with the effects of the glyphs around it. So there's a legitimate concern that rather than simply manifesting over top this spell, it would actually manifest over top the entire thing. We don't want that. We want it confined to the middle. So to do that, we're going to put region signs here to confine this here. We have levitation to make it so the cloud floats over top the cloud that's underneath it. The cloud that's underneath will be defined in the outer ring. God, I can only imagine how bad it will be to write the explanation for how this thing works. I much prefer drawing spells to writing the explanations. But I want both in this book, so I have no choice. And now, 2 more levitation signs. There we go. The first two layers of the spell are done. Now for the final layer, which is the most complicated one. Alright, so we're going to need 4 billow signs. We're going to start with the light sigils. We're going to have 2, again. Should I put them here? Nah, it's cooler if I put them here. Light sigil. Light sigil. Kind of squish this light sigil laterally, but you know what? Whatevs. Whatevs. Next up, we need... What do we need? Repetition signs. So the repetition signs, just like in the Serpent's Bed of Sand. Sorry, Dragon's Bed of Sand is the the scanlations name for the spell used in Chapter 7 to get the dragon to fall asleep so they could escape the underground labyrinth. The illusory labyrinth, or whatever it was called. I feel like I drew that too small. I think Dragon's Bed of... Serpent's Bed of Sand... Wait, what was the... Yeah, Serpent's Bed of Sand is what it's called in the scanlation. Which is cooler than Dragon's Bed of Sand. Wait. I actually don't remember what it's called. Never mind. I'm just yapping, bro. It's been 4 years. I'm confused. I've been streaming for 3 hours. No, over 3 hours. I am tired. Permit me a little bit of dementia. So we have 1 repetition sign. Did I draw this backwards? I think I drew the repetition sign backwards, guys. I drew the mirror image of the repetition sign instead of the correct one, I think. I'll have to check on my laptop, which has shut down. Please boot. I'm begging you, boot. Please boot. If you die on me, I'm gonna lose my mind. How am I gonna do school if you're dead? All right, there we go. It is, let's see if it's backwards. It is backwards, wonderful. I love it when I mess up. It's so much fun to mess up, guys. So much fun. So much fun to be wrong. Just try and get as little smearing as possible because I know this paper sucks. It's not great. There's still a ton, but you know what? What can you do? It's the best. There's only so much you can do. I have accepted my fate. So the signs go that way. And then I have the boom and the boom. Yep, that's 1. And then repetition here. But yeah, in the Serpent's Bed of Sand, what the repetition signs do is they make it so the spell is the cloud that the dragon... So they use it to get a dragon to fall asleep. If you weren't here when I described this earlier. They basically put the spell out so that the dragon can lay on it and go to bed because it's like a comfy cloud bed for the dragon. They do that so they can sneak past and escape the underground labyrinth. And what they do to prevent the dragon from crushing the cloud under his own weight is they use a repetition sign. What the repetition sign will do... Well, actually, it's a repetition sigil. What the repetition sigil does is makes it so the cloud is continually refreshed to its base form, so that instead of getting crushed, it basically springs back to its original condition, rather than being smushed under the dragon's weight, unable to rebound to its original shape. That allows it to be more stable, makes it firmer. That's the most important part, because we want the lower cloud that the brushbug is lying on to be firmer than the upper one, so that he can sink through the upper one and be cozy, but not sink through the lower one and lay directly on the wood. All right, let's see if I can do this billowing sign well. I think that's the best billowing. No, it's not. It's tilted. Wonderful. I love it when I can't draw a billowing sign. Oh, it's not centered either. Gosh darn. Billow. Please be good. It's okay. It's a little small, but it's fine. It's a decent shape. Billow again. Please be good. Please cooperate. Hand. Draw. Nope. That's terrible. I don't even look at it. The finished product. I know it's bad. Every time I have to erase, I can't remove the smudge. Yep. More billows that look disgusting. Another billow. Last one. Whatever. I don't care anymore. Even Sensei can't draw these well. Even in the release for Volume 2, or Volume 1, I don't remember if it's Volume 1 or 2. It's either at the start of Volume 2 or the end of Volume 1. Sensei does draw a couple of these for the Serpent's Bed of Sand spell, and all of them are not the same. Like, all of them are any equal. It's just really hard to draw the shape well. So I don't really fault myself for this. It's just really hard. I could practice more. I could stand to practice this one more, but you know. All right, so that would be the billing sign. All right, so the last thing I'm gonna do to make it so that the brush bug can lay on this cloud of light, to make it as sturdy as possible, is include strengthen signs. So by including strengthen signs, my goal is that I can make the spell a little stronger. That will boost the strength of repetition, which will make it a little bit more sturdy than it would be otherwise. So strengthen here. And regions there as well. So the point of regions, I should probably put regions on the outside and strengthen on the inside. So the idea of putting regions here is I can use regions to, actually, no, it's fine. I want the base to be wider than the bed. So by putting regions here, what I can do is I can confine the area that the cloud fills to the area above the glyph. I don't want it spilling over the sides and filling just the entire room with cloud, which we've seen billowing spells do before with Serpent's Bed of Sand and the cloud spell that Tedia used. So to prevent that, I'm using region signs, so it specifically fills the area within the glyph. So yeah. So next up, we're gonna do another strengthen sign. Another region sign and strengthen. We're gonna have to go around the whole glyph. Ugh, there's so many left to do. I think we're halfway there, a little bit over. 3 more. Strengthen sign. Strengthen sign. The brush bed is also one that will take an extremely long time to write the explanation for how it works, and I might have to spill over to 2 pages. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna, that's strengthen sign's terrible. What I'm just gonna do is I'm gonna skip over that for this one. Maybe do one more spell and end the stream, because I've been doing this for a while. All right, brush bed. So I'm gonna label the signs, and then we're gonna call it quits. So fire. Signs and sigils, apologies. Actually, fun fact, light is technically a variant of the fire sigil, so the more you know. Fire, light. I'm gonna list the sigils first. Repetition. No. Don't mess that up again, Chroma. I hate this paper. Did I just do it again? I did. What am I doing, guys? I'm throwing. Or a real witch. Bro, I'd be so cooked. All right, repetition. All right, we got repetition down. Next, we need radial. Oh god, that's a terrible radial. I shouldn't erase it. I should leave it. It's fine if it's terrible. Radial. You can't even read that. What am I doing? Exhaustion is getting to me. That looks terrible. Whatever. Whatever. So we have radial. Then we get region. Then we have strengthen. Strengthen. All right, on to the other side. Actually, no, we only have 1 left. All right, and last but not least, no, we have 2. Billowing. And levitation. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so the brush bed is drawn. This would be spell number 14. Do I do more or do I call it quits? I think I'll do 1 more. All right, lastly, actually this is 14. Yeah, getting to 15 is that's a good place to stop once I get to 15 spells. So we will do, so all these are so basic or extremely painful to draw. You know what? I might just call it quits here. I'm kind of tired. All right, see you guys later. Thank you for tuning into the stream. I had a lot of fun. talking about spells with you guys and drawing spells with you guys. I'm probably going to be streaming again sometime this week within the next 2 to 3 days. So I'd appreciate if you guys tuned in then. But yeah, see you guys later, and thank you for being a wonderful chat. Later, guys.